Chapter 711. Suyu took a deep breath, causing the surrounding air to revolve. The spiritual energy of the universe became violent and gathered in Suyu's direction. In the twinkling of an eye, the area within 10,000 feet of Suyu became a vacuum zone. The air around Suyu gradually turned dark. Upon closer inspection, one would see that it was an endless stream of air swirling around Suyu's body. As the air was being compressed, it became pitch black. From afar, a black ribbon danced around Suyu like a butterfly. Provenance Saints 8 characters, swordsman. With a low shout, the black ribbons suddenly exploded, producing countless strands of black mist that radiated in all directions. Everywhere it passed, space shattered into pieces and transformed into an expanse of pitch black. Gu Taishu's sound wave attack was completely extinguished into shattered space. Mid-grade sound wave legendary art. Gu Taishu was shocked and bewildered. He couldn't understand how the young man in front of him could have such a terrifying level of comprehension. He could even cultivate a legendary level cultivation technique to the consummate level of the first layer. Among the many cultivation techniques, the sound wave cultivation technique was undoubtedly the most difficult one to cultivate. However, Suyu had managed to cultivate it to such an extent. Amidst his bewilderment, the black air current tore through space and pressed down on him. Gu Taishu's expression changed slightly, and his figure retreated frantically until he was 10,000 feet away. The people in the Dragon Abyss were dumbfounded, and they were shocked speechless. He was a dignified level 9 fairy, yet Suyu still managed to gain the upper hand. It seemed like the so-called Great Saint Master couldn't do anything to Suyu. In fact, he might even be killed by Suyu today. Gu Taishu, show me your true abilities. Suyu clapped his hands lightly, dispersing the remnant airflow around him. I don't believe that an almighty divine master is only capable of this much. He was the #1 genius of the 18 blessed and heavenly lands. The Purple Cloud Palace had done its best to nurture him. How could he only be at this level? Gu Taishu's performance was too mediocre, regardless of whether it was his cultivation techniques, his weapons, or his own cultivation. He didn't seem like a late-stage almighty at all. Suyu even wondered if he was really Gu Taishu. Swish, swish. Suddenly, the sound of the air being torn could be heard as 31 figures with powerful auras swept over. You're back. Suyu's gaze turned grave. In front of him was Gu Taishu, and behind him were 31 later-stage fairies. Even Suyu would find it difficult to deal with such a lineup. Let's attack together. Don't give him a chance to use the heaven-extinguishing divine palm. The second Saint Master shouted loudly. He took the lead and attacked with his strongest attack. The rest of the people also followed suit. It seemed like they wanted to kill Suyu on the spot. Dozens of colorful rays of light covered the sky and covered the earth as they charged towards Suyu. Suyu retreated and avoided the attack. He naturally would not face it head-on. However, just as he retreated, a few spatial rifts silently approached him from below. He hastily sensed that there was an extremely threatening sound wave hidden in the space. Buddha mantra, a sneak attack. Suyu's eyes were filled with disdain as he looked at Gu Taishu, who had somehow circled below them. He was a mighty divine master, yet he had actually launched a sneak attack. It was truly unimaginable. Based on Suyu's interactions with him, Gu Taishu was extremely arrogant and looked down on everyone. It was really hard to imagine that he would choose to launch a sneak attack. Are you really Gu Taishu? Suyu shook his head, disappointment apparent in his eyes. Since the beginning of the fight, Suyu had already clearly sensed Gu Taishu's abnormality. If he wasn't mistaken, this wasn't the real Gu Taishu. I never said that I was Gu Taishu, Gu Taishu sneered. Suyu's starry would shone with a cold light. I don't care if you're a cat or a dog. Since you have appeared here today, don't even think about leaving alive. As the sound wave approached him, the 31 later stage fairies surrounded Suyu from all sides. Suyu didn't panic. Instead, he became even calmer. With a clanging sound, a blue spiritual ruler appeared around Suyu. It was the 6th directional ruler, which had a certain level of prediction ability and could defend against the enemy's attack in advance. At the same time, Su Yu condensed moonlight in his left palm and gathered the energy of the world in his right hand. He then used both the Buddhist saint's 8 characters and the heaven-extinguishing divine palm at the same time. This scene caused Gu Taishu and the second Saint Master's faces to sink. "Stop him! Don't let him use it!" Gu Taishu shouted as he quickly charged toward him. The second Saint Master also sensed the silver-haired youth's danger. He clenched his teeth, gave up on attacking from afar, and charged toward him. When 2 level 9 fairies attacked each other, how terrifying would their power be? I want to see whether you will die first, or if you will use your cultivation technique first. Seeing that the 2 of them were about to attack him, Su Yu laughed. "Of course, you will die first." As he spoke, lightning flickered around Su Yu's body, and he used the thunder escape technique to escape. When he reappeared, he was already standing 1,000 feet away from them. At this moment, his left hand was shining with a dazzling moonlight, while his whole body was fluttering with black silk. Su Yu, who was illuminated by the black and white light, seemed exceptionally evil. "Destroy!" Su Yu's left palm flew toward Gu Taishu, while his right palm flew toward the 31 people. 2 terrifying waves of energy swept toward the 2 groups of people at the same time. A deafening roar reverberated throughout the universe, and the earth-shattering sound shook everyone's eyes. When it dissipated, Gu Taishu was forced back 1,000 feet, while the corners of his mouth were filled with blood. As for the 31 later stage fairies, apart from the second Saint Master, who was barely unscathed, the rest were all injured by the sound wave. Their eardrums were bleeding, and their internal organs were shattered. There were even 2 fairies who were the first to bear the brunt of the sound wave, and their bodies were directly shattered. When the people in the Dragon Abyss witnessed this scene, they couldn't help but gasp in excitement. He had fought 32 people alone, and all of them were later stage fairies. His monstrous martial prowess frightened them to the core. They had heard of the title of Jinlong's #1 expert, but they had never imagined that he would be so powerful. They were afraid that even if all the people in the continent joined hands, they still wouldn't be a match for Su Yu. However, Elder Jiu's gaze became even more solemn. Wu Aoyue, who was standing beside him and supporting Xiener, was also biting her lips. Her eyes were filled with worry. "Elder Jiu, do you have a way to save him? It seems like the young master has the upper hand, but he is still barely holding on. If he still had 3 vital energy crystals, he would be able to easily crush them. However, the owner of one of the vital energy crystals has shattered, and his vital energy won't be able to support him for a long time. If this goes on, he will surely die." Wu Aoyue revealed Su Yu's current situation. The cultivation gap between him and his enemies was too great, so he had no choice but to continuously use high-grade cultivation techniques. However, these cultivation techniques required a large amount of vital energy to be used. Although Su Yu seemed calm on the surface, he was already at the end of his rope, and he was just barely holding on. Elder Jiu's gaze was filled with worry and helplessness. The level of their battle isn't something that we can interfere with. If we participate in the battle, we will only be a burden to him. However, I still can't understand why he didn't follow us into the Dragon Abyss, since he has so many heavenly orchid silver bamboos, golden leaves, and even a divine master can't easily break them. So, why did he choose to fight when he knew that he would surely die? Elder Jiu voiced out his doubts. Since Su Yu had already prepared such an impregnable refuge, why did he choose to die like a moth flying into a flame? Elder Jiu believed that Su Yu wasn't someone who would risk his life for his dignity. Moreover, he had just gotten married to Xiener, so how could he bear to leave Xiener alone and die alone? Wu Aoyue's body trembled slightly. She discovered that she also couldn't understand Su Yu's actions. However, she could faintly feel that Su Yu was courting his own death. Oh! Suddenly, Xiener, who was unconscious in her embrace, furrowed her brows as she woke up from the pain in her neck. "Brother Su Yu!" Xiener cried out in alarm when she woke up. She looked around for Su Yu subconsciously. Wu Aoyue calmed her down and said softly, "The young master is still safe, and he is fighting with the enemy. Miss Qin, please don't be impatient." Sienna hurriedly followed everyone's gaze and looked outside from the dragon abyss. Su Yu's figure, which was in the sky, could be seen clearly. His eyes were filled with decisiveness and coldness, just like when he was facing his enemies in the past. However, Sienna could clearly see that Su Yu's face was slightly pale. Brother Su Yu won't be able to hold on for much longer. I must go and save him. Sienna's heart was in her throat, and she struggled to leave Wu Aoyue's embrace. However, Wu Aoyue grabbed her even more tightly. Miss Qin, don't be impulsive. Your cultivation is too low, and if you rush out, you will only be a burden to the young master. Sienna only had Su Yu in her eyes, so she wouldn't listen to Wu Aoyue's words. Let me go. I've already lost Brother Su Yu once, and I almost lost him completely. This time, I can't leave his side again, even if I have to die with him. However, Wu Aoyue didn't let go of her. Instead, she grabbed her even more tightly, and her voice, which had always been cold, was filled with anger. Shut up. Sienna was startled by her rebuke. In her memory, she was Su Yu's maid, and she had always been respectful to her. She had never imagined that she would dare to rebuke her like this. When she raised her head and looked at her, she saw a pair of slightly red eyes, which were filled with tears. Sienna couldn't understand the anger in her eyes, which had been suppressed for a long time. The young master risked his life for you time and time again, and he almost lost his life several times. Isn't that enough? Have you never thought about why he did all of this? Wu Aoyue was like a river that had burst its banks, and she released all of her suppressed emotions. Her hysterical shout caused Sienna to calm down. The survivors of the Dragon Abyss also calmed down. In the Shenyue Islands' Fengwang Valley, he fought against the Holy King for you. In the Lucian faction's wedding, he fought against Elder Hualong for you. In the Phoenix Cabinet, he fought against Shenkong for you. All of this happened because of you. Because you were too weak and useless, the young master could only run about for you time and time again. He was worried about you, and he risked his life for you. From the beginning to the end, what have you done for him? All you have done for him is endless trouble. Now, you still want to rush out so that he will be distracted to protect you, who is weak and useless. Then, he will be killed by the enemy. Will you be satisfied with that? Wu Aoyue touched her chest, and she almost shouted out loud. She was clearly shouting at Sienna, but everyone could tell that she was also shouting at herself. She was blaming herself. She was equally incompetent. Sienna was completely startled, and after a long while, she lowered her head and became silent. Indeed, she had been causing trouble for Su Yu along the way, and she had made him risk his life time and time again to save her. As for her, she had only collected insignificant cultivation resources. Now, she had even rushed out and caused Su Yu's death. All of this was because she was useless and cowardly. She had fallen into a predicament, and she had caused Su Yu to risk his life. She clenched her fists tightly, and her small shoulders trembled slightly. Chapter 712. In the outside world, Gu Taishu had been struck by the moon palm twice and was finally slightly injured. However, when he noticed Su Yu's pale face, he smiled coldly and said, "Haha, I see. Your vital energy isn't even comparable to a 2 crystals half-fairy. You must be struggling to fight for so long." His words shocked the second Saint Master and the others. After they observed Su Yu carefully, they felt much more at ease. Although this lad was strong, the gap between their cultivation levels was difficult to make up for. Let's attack together. He won't be able to hold on for long. Gu Taishu's lips curled into a mocking smile. I want to see how many times you can use such a high-level cultivation technique. Gu Taishu and the second Saint Master exchanged a look, then suddenly attacked. Both sides joined forces to attack Su Yu once again. They were prepared to exhaust Su Yu to death. Su Yu sighed helplessly in his heart. If Gu Taishu was alone, Su Yu was confident that he could wipe him off the face of the earth before his vital energy was exhausted. However, the second Saint Master and the others' battle prowess were stronger than Gu Taishu's. Seeing the two sides charging towards him, Su Yu slowly closed his eyes. When he opened them again, he had regained his ice-cold expression. Fine, I'll kill as many as I can. Su Yu's eyes shone with an ice-cold light as he laughed and looked around. Come and accept your death. His shout caused Gu Taishu, the second Saint Master, and the others, who were charging towards him, to slow down. They were all shocked. Humph! A cornered beast is still struggling. Let's attack together and destroy his body and soul. Gu Taishu suppressed the uneasiness in his heart as he roared and charged forward once again. However, just as the two sides were about to launch a pincer attack to kill Su Yu, a graceful figure descended on a white cloud and landed between Su Yu, the second Saint Master, and the others. She had a graceful figure and a beautiful face. As she stepped on the white cloud, she looked like a fairy. At that moment, the whole world seemed to have lost its color. Only this fairy's beauty existed in this world. A group of people fighting against one person is too unfair. Why don't I join in? Her clear voice was like the rumbling of a mountain spring. So you turned around and looked at the familiar back view, the familiar aura, and the unfamiliar feeling that he felt was strange. Jingyu. Su Yu looked blankly at the beautiful figure before him, and an indescribable emotion welled up in his heart. Before the wedding, Xia Jingyu had severed all ties with him, and she had sworn that she would make Su Yu regret his actions. But now, she had come back to help him when he was in danger. Big Sister Jingyu. In the Dragon Abyss, Qin Xiener's face revealed a hint of joy. Since she's here, I can't fall behind. After he finished speaking, he didn't hesitate any longer and took out a jade bottle from the small pocket on his waist. He poured out the medicinal pill within and drank it in one gulp. Then he sat cross-legged on the ground. A moment later, his aura changed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Wu Aoyue was shocked. Breakthrough? What kind of medicinal pill was this? He can break through directly without even going through heavenly tribulations? Elder Jiao squinted his eyes and said, "The flying immortal pill is a long-lost ancient pill. This little girl actually had such an elixir on her? What a surprise." For some unknown reason, Wu Aoyue subconsciously looked at Su Yu, and a bitter smile appeared at the corners of her mouth. "You have even prepared this for Qin Xiener. Young master, have you really resolved yourself to die?" A suffocating feeling welled up in her chest. As Wu Aoyue looked at Su Yu's back, she felt a suffocating feeling in her heart. It was as if something was about to happen to Su Yu. In the outside world, the sudden appearance of a beautiful woman caused the second Saint Master and the others to become absent-minded. With a face as beautiful as a fairy, was she really a human woman? It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call her a goddess. "Are you courting death?" Gu Taishu asked coldly. Xia Jingyu didn't look at him at all. Her gaze was fixed on the second Saint Master and the others. "Since you all want to exterminate the Zhenlong continent, dying now or later is just a matter of time. So what's the difference?" After she spoke, she looked at Su Yu, her beautiful face expressionless. "You could just focus on dealing with Gu Taishu. Leave them to me." Su Yu was startled. "You? Jingyu, you can go to the Dragon Abyss now. I will protect you there, so don't die in vain." Unexpectedly, Xia Jingyu revealed a faint smile. Her smile was mysterious, and Su Yu couldn't understand it. "Is that so?" As she spoke, she walked toward the second Saint Master and the others. "Humph, you don't know what you're talking about. Kill her first." The second Saint Master snorted softly as he thrust his palm towards Xia Jingyu. The powerful vital energy emitted from his palm was enough to turn a three crystals half-fairy into nothingness. However, the strange thing was that when the second Saint Master struck out with his palm, Xia Jingyu moved 9 steps to the left. The vital energy in the second Saint Master's palm brushed past Xia Jingyu's slender arm. It didn't cause her any harm at all. This scene didn't seem like much to an outsider, but the second Saint Master felt as if Xia Jingyu had predicted the direction and range of his attack in advance and had easily dodged it. The second Saint Master's face was filled with bewilderment as he shouted in a low voice, "This woman is a little strange. Let's attack her together." Hearing this, the 31 people attacked simultaneously. Multicolored rays of light interweaved to form a giant net, trapping Xia Jingyu within it. If Xia Jingyu came into contact with any of the vital energy, she would be killed on the spot. However, what made the second Saint Master's expression change drastically was that Xia Jingyu moved her feet while they were still condensing their vital energy. She first moved 3 steps to the right, then backward, then to the left, then to the right, and then backward again. Soon after, an unbelievable scene unfolded before their eyes. The places that she had dodged were all the places where the vital energy had attacked. In other words, the moment they attacked, before they even released their true chi, she already knew where their true chi was going to strike. You can sense them in advance. The second Saint Master's voice trembled slightly. Xia Jingyu revealed a mysterious smile. Sense them? That's not it. As she spoke, she took out a small green and white sword from her sleeves and threw it at them. She then said calmly, "One of you will die from this sword." The group of later-stage fairies looked at each other in dismay. The small white sword was just an ordinary middle-grade divine artifact. There wasn't any poison on the sword's hilt, nor was it imbued with some mysterious power. It was just an ordinary small sword. Moreover, the way the woman threw the sword was also ordinary, as it didn't possess any power. This sword couldn't even kill a holy king. So how could it kill the fairies? "Everyone, get out of the way." Out of caution, the second Saint Master ordered everyone to get out of the way. The thought of intercepting the sword flashed past his mind, but he didn't attack. The small white sword passed through the crowd and fell from the sky after losing its power. Along the way, it was filled with spatial fissures caused by the collision between Su Yu and Gu Taishu. Inadvertently, the sword was swallowed by one of the remaining spatial fissures. The spatial fissures were filled with spatial turbulence, so if the sword fell into them, it would be crushed to pieces. From the beginning to the end, the small sword didn't cause any casualties. The second Saint Master was suspicious. Could this woman be playing tricks on him? Have you caused enough trouble? No matter what tricks you used, in the face of absolute power, everything is futile. Go kill her. The second Saint Master calmed down and waved his hand. The later stage fairies who had split up gathered once again and attacked Xia Jingyu. However, just as they were about to move, a horrible shriek came from their group. The second Saint Master's heart thumped, and he quickly turned around to look. What he saw caused his pupils to contract. He saw that the chest of a later stage fairy, who was the last to be killed, had been cut in half. His entire chest had almost been cut off. With their sharp senses, they could clearly see that a black spatial fissure had appeared behind the fairy who had been killed. Within the fissure, only the tip of a sword was left. It was stained with blood as it disappeared into the black turbulence. This scene shocked everyone. There was actually a later stage fairy who had been killed by a small sword, which couldn't be any more ordinary. The second Saint Master and the others felt their scalps go numb as they turned around to look at the beautiful woman in front of them. The second Saint Master's heart thumped wildly. This wasn't some kind of reaction. She was actually seeing the future in advance. The reaction had only happened in an instant, but the woman had said something that no one would believe, yet it had actually happened. It was as if she had seen the future. No matter how unbelievable it was, it would definitely happen. Seeing the future? Xia Jingyu smiled calmly. You can say that. However, I prefer to call it the trajectory. The trajectory? Suyu was shocked. The trajectory was the divine decree's inheritance left behind by Tianjizi. In the end, Xia Jingyu had obtained it. She had already comprehended Tianjizi's divine decree. The trajectory was the cause and effect of the world. It would follow the flow of time and leave behind a trail of time. If one could see a person or an object's trail of time in advance, one would be able to know what would happen to them at any time. Xia Jingyu had said that the sword would kill a person because she had seen the sword's trail. She knew that it would kill a later stage fairy at some point in time. In the end, the sword had indeed followed the trail and killed a fairy. In the eyes of others, this was foreseeing the future. However, only Xia Jingyu knew that she had seen the trail. She knew when a person would grow old, fall sick, and die. Such a terrifying divine decree shocked the second Saint Master and the others, causing them to hesitate. Do you want to know your trail? Xia Jingyu smiled calmly as she looked at all of them. Her gaze caused their bodies to tremble. It was as if she had seen through their fates. All of you will die today. None of you will survive. Xia Jingyu smiled. Although her smile was beautiful, it gave them an ice-cold feeling. The second Saint Master's heart thumped wildly, and his face turned pale. They will all die here? How is this possible? After taking a deep breath, the second Saint Master forced himself to calm down. He then shouted in a low voice, "Don't listen to this demonic woman's lies. Let's kill her first." Everyone was terrified, so they followed the second Saint Master and charged forward to surround Xia Jingyu. Xia Jingyu was not afraid at all. She was like a fluttering butterfly in the midst of the crowd, casually wandering among the crowd. Although this woman is really strange, she doesn't have any cultivation. There is no need to worry. The second Saint Master shouted in a low voice. He was overjoyed when he realized that something was amiss. The crowd also quickly realized that something was amiss, which made them feel much more relaxed. Xia Jingyu's perception was extraordinary, but she had never cultivated any powerful cultivation techniques. Hence, her fighting prowess was not as strong as Su Yu's. Therefore, although she could deal with them easily, she did not have much destructive power. Chapter 7:13. The second Saint Master snorted coldly. "You are just bluffing. You guys deal with this woman. I will help the great Saint Master kill Su Yu." This woman was strange, and they could not kill her in a short time. However, she could not inflict much damage either. Hence, he immediately flew towards Su Yu and joined forces with Gu Taishu to kill Su Yu. Su Yu was suddenly under great pressure, as he was fighting two people at the same time. In a short time, Su Yu could rely on his powerful cultivation technique to gain the upper hand, but as time went on, he would eventually reveal some flaws. Just as the ruler blocked Gu Taishu's attack, Su Yu opened his right arm, revealing a weak spot under his armpit, which was close to his heart. "Die!" The second Saint Master roared as he found a fatal flaw in Su Yu's body. He clawed at Su Yu's heart, intending to shatter it. The ruler could not react in time, and Gu Taishu was in front of him, so Su Yu could not avoid it. He was alarmed, but he had been fighting Su Sha for a long time, so he reacted quickly. Almost at the same time, the Eternal Stone King armor appeared on Su Yu's body. The moment the armor appeared, a claw fiercely struck the area near his ribs. Although the armor had dissipated most of the attack, a small part of it had still penetrated the armor and affected Su Yu's body. Su Yu was sent flying by the powerful attack. He groaned as a trickle of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He is still alive. The second Saint Master's face darkened as he looked at the armor on Su Yu's body. Even a level 9 fairy would have been killed by such a strike, and Su Yu's damaged high-grade spiritual armor was really shocking. "Humph! I will take advantage of your weakness to kill you." The second Saint Master's attack had failed, so he followed up with another attack. Su Yu was already exhausted, and his face was even paler than before. However, the flames in his eyes did not diminish. That will depend on your survival. However, just as the two of them were about to collide, a strange movement came from the dragon abyss. The densely sealed heavenly orchid silver bamboo's golden leaves were slowly dispersing. Su Yu's expression changed. Who opened the seal? Apart from Su Yu, no one else could open the seal. Only the people inside could open it at will. This was a dangerous battle, so who would dare to come out? Su Yu was furious. As he was blaming himself, he suddenly felt a chill run down his spine as he stared at the mouth of the dragon abyss. It was as if there was an extremely terrifying monster in the dragon abyss staring at him. The second Saint Master and Gu Taishu, who were about to make a move, also had a grave expression on their faces. Such a strong, baleful chi. Also, what's with that death chi? Why is there such a dense death chi in the dragon abyss? The second Saint Master could not help but shiver. Gu Taishu squinted his eyes, and his pupils contracted gradually. Then, he looked at Su Yu and shouted in a deep voice, "What the hell are you doing now?" Even fairies don't have such a large amount of deathly energy. In his opinion, Su Yu must have arranged some kind of terrifying backup plan. After exchanging a few blows, Gu Taishu had a profound understanding of Su Yu's endless backup plans. Su Yu did not pay any attention to them. Instead, he used his soul eyes to penetrate the darkness and look into the depths of the dragon abyss. However, the moment his gaze entered, Su Yu's eyes met with a pair of dark red blood-colored eyes. It was ice-cold, emotionless, and indifferent. It was filled with a majesty that disregarded the common people. Most importantly, his blood-red eyes were filled with a terrifying aura of death. With just a single look, Su Yu felt an acute pain in his soul. A wisp of deathly energy followed Su Yu's soul, entered his entire soul, and struck the divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron. The divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron was actually shaken. This was the second time that the divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron had almost shifted its position. Previously, it was the Blood Emperor who had attacked. This time, it was the mysterious Blood Eye. Su Yu's face turned pale, and he was greatly shocked. Whose eyes are those? If not for the divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron, those eyes could have taken Su Yu's life. Su Yu immediately averted his gaze, his heart turning grave. When did such a terrifying, ferocious creature appear in the sealed dragon abyss? Were Xian, and the others threatened? Suddenly, Su Yu's expression changed once again, and he quickly retreated. Oh no, something is coming out. Retreat quickly. Gu Taishu's senses were sharp. His expression changed drastically, and he retreated hastily. Everyone, retreat immediately. The second Saint Master's expression changed, and he immediately ordered his people to retreat quickly. From the dragon abyss, they all felt an extremely unsettling aura of death. Moreover, the aura of death was rapidly approaching, flying out from the dragon abyss. Everyone stopped fighting and fixed their gazes on the dragon abyss. The aura of death was becoming more and more intense, and wisps of black fog were rising from the dragon abyss. The black fog was formed by the aura of death. What is the aura of death that has turned into fog? Gu Taishu's eyes were filled with shock. A feeling of death engulfed everyone's hearts at the same time. Shortly after, a large mass of ink-black fog gushed out from the dragon abyss. It was as big as a small mountain, and it was so dense that it was impossible to see what was going on inside. However, this black fog, which was as big as a small mountain, was emitting an extremely ferocious aura. It was as if a ferocious creature from ancient times had been reborn from death. Everyone's hearts were in their throats, and they were all vigilantly watching the black fog mountain. All of a sudden, the black fog wriggled and shrank, slowly revealing the true appearance of the ferocious creature within it. Finally, the black fog shrunk to the size of a human. All of the black fog shrunk and entered the human's body. When all of the black fog had entered the human's body, the human's appearance was clearly revealed. Sienna. Su was shocked. The last person that was revealed was unexpectedly Qin Sienna. Was that ferocious aura really emitted by her? Su Yu fixed his eyes on her, and when he used his soul eyes, he could see that Sienna's body was filled with an endless amount of fog. It was the aura of death. There was also a power within her bloodline that caused Su Yu's heart to palpitate. A human's bloodline power. What kind of terrifying constitution is this? The second Saint Master was shocked, speechless. It was obvious that he had never expected that the so-called peerless, ferocious creature was actually a weak little girl. Gu Taishu's face turned pale, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. It's impossible. Why would such a constitution appear in such a desolate land? It's the Death Phoenix Constitution. It's the constitution of the 9 underworlds, Phoenix's bloodline. Swoosh! The second Saint Master's face turned deathly pale, and he spoke in a trembling voice. The Death Phoenix Constitution? A nature-defying, ancient spiritual body that has inherited the 9 underworlds, Phoenix's bloodline? It's rumored that people with such a constitution can communicate with yin and yang through their eyes, and they have the death body that can take any living creature's life. Wu Aoyue, who was in the Dragon Abyss, was also deeply shocked. The Death Phoenix Constitution is also known as the Death God Constitution. It's rumored that it's one of the most terrifying and mysterious ancient spiritual bodies in the ancient times. It has the 9 underworlds, Phoenix's bloodline, and it's also known as the death god constitution among the human race. It can take away life and bestow death upon anyone. It's almost like a god of death. She then added, Qin Xian unexpectedly has such a rare, nature-defying spiritual body. There has never been such a case in the history of Jiuzhou. The only case was that a woman with the Death Phoenix constitution was intercepted by a group of all-creation old monsters when she was passing through Jiuzhou. In the end, those all-creation old monsters never came back. The Death Phoenix constitution was a nature-defying divine constitution that even Yun Yazi had wanted to take as his disciple. Even Xia Jingyu's goddess constitution might not be able to rival it. Well, why did I come out? Qin Xian opened her eyes, which were filled with a deathly aura. When she opened her eyes in a daze, she was startled by the changes in her surroundings. When she saw Su Yu out of the corner of her eye, she was pleasantly surprised. She flew into Su Yu's embrace and complained, Brother Su Yu, I made a breakthrough. Oh, right. You are really bad. You left Xian behind again. Breakthrough? Not only did she make a breakthrough, but she even awakened her bloodline power. As he hugged Qin Xian, Su Yu felt like he was on the brink of death. It was as if Xian could take his life with a single thought. I'm sorry, Xian. Su Yu was speechless. He knew that Xian must have swallowed the fairy pill in order to make a breakthrough in order to save him. Su Yu could clearly feel her kind intentions. Xian's nose turned sour, and she leaned her head on Su Yu's shoulder. I don't want you to take risks for me. If you die, I will be too lonely. I only have you and my father left. Su Yu nodded and patted Xian's back lightly. Suddenly, Xian came back to her senses. She quickly left Su Yu's embrace and examined him. Brother Su Yu, how are you? When she raised her head, Su Yu's pale face and the blood flowing from the corners of his mouth entered Qin Xian's eyes. You are injured. Qin Xian clenched her fists. She blamed herself and was also angry. She extended her small hand and wiped the blood from the corners of Su Yu's mouth. Her gem-like eyes were filled with coldness. Brother Su Yu, you should rest. This time, it's my turn to protect you. As she spoke, she suddenly turned her head around. She had an extremely pretty and cute face, but in the eyes of the second Saint Master and the others, it was as if they were being stared at by a peerless monster. As she swept her gaze over them, Xian's eyes reflected each and every one of them. Traces of death aura slowly flowed out from his eyes. An obscure and terrifying energy surrounded Xian's body. Die! Xian opened her mouth and spat out an ice-cold word. Apart from that, Xian didn't make any other movements. However, this scene caused the whole world to fall into a deathly silence. The bodies of the 30 later stage fairies, who had surrounded Xia Jingyu, suddenly turned into ashes, as if they were made of paper in a raging inferno. It didn't matter whether they were grade 8 fairy realm experts or grade 7 fairy realm experts. They didn't feel any pain, nor did they feel any fear. In fact, they even had the same expressions as when they were alive. Just like that, they silently turned into ashes. The 30 fairy realm experts had been killed in an instant, their lives stolen. This was all because the little girl in Su Yu's embrace had uttered the word die. The whole world fell into a deathly silence. It didn't matter whether it was the Dragon Abyss, Gu Taishu, the second Saint Master, or Su Yu himself. Even though Yun Yazi had emphasized that the Death Phoenix Constitution was an extraordinary constitution, Su Yu had never thought that such a constitution would be so terrifying. She could decide the fate of all living beings with a single glance and a single word, just like a god of death. This was the Death Phoenix Constitution. The shock in his heart was indescribable. This is the Death Phoenix Constitution. The second Saint Master's voice was hoarse, and his whole body couldn't help but shiver. If Xia Jingyu's ability to foresee the future made him feel uneasy, then Qin Xian's Death Phoenix Constitution made him feel a deep dread. Swoosh! The second Saint Master calmed himself down and slowly retreated. He then turned around and soared into the sky to escape. He didn't even have the will to fight anymore. In his eyes, this wasn't a battle anymore, but a god of death taking lives. However, in the eyes of the people in the Dragon Abyss, It was just the slaughterer becoming the slaughterer. Sienna coldly looked at him, and his image was reflected in her eyes. She then coldly said, "Die." As her voice drifted through the air, Suyu could feel a mysterious and terrifying power seeping into the Jinlong world. Shortly after, the second Saint Master's body, which was still fleeing, started turning into ashes. As he fled, his body gradually disappeared. In the end, only his head was left, which flew into the sky before falling down to the ground. Even a level 9 fairy couldn't escape death. As they looked at the cute and harmless Sheen Sienna, all of them felt a chill run down their spines. Was she really a human? She was clearly a god of death who controlled all living beings' lives. In the Dragon Abyss, shock appeared in Jiu and Zhou's eyes. The Death Phoenix Constitution is one of the most terrifying ancient spirit bodies. Who would have expected that Suyu would have such a divine body hidden by his side, and that she would attack at the last moment and kill all of the enemy's later stage fairies? Such a terrifying scene would be unforgettable to all of them. While they were still in shock, a slight sound echoed from Jiu and Zhou's side. Phoenix Master Qiu. Jiu Yuan Zhou was slightly surprised. She had been unconscious for half a year, so how could she suddenly wake up? Wu Aoyue immediately went forward and supported Phoenix Master Qiu, who was slowly opening her eyes. Phoenix Master Qiu, you have finally woken up. You were unconscious for such a long time. Phoenix Master Qiu was at a loss at first, and her gaze was sluggish. Then, she gradually came to her senses and looked around her. After a moment of silence, Phoenix Master Qiu seemed to recall something, and her expression abruptly changed to one of fear. I woke up a long time ago. I woke up half a year ago. Someone did something to my medicine, causing me to fall asleep every time I was about to wake up. Elder Zhou's expression changed when he heard this. How is this possible? You were in the Heavenly Law Alliance's heart-nurturing palace, where fairies were all around. Who could bypass them and do something to your medicine? As Phoenix Master Qiu's thoughts became clearer, the fright on her face became more obvious. No, she didn't need to bypass the fairies, because she was the one taking care of me. Her words caused Elder Zhou and Wu Aoyue's expressions to stiffen. Suyu had been in secluded cultivation for half a year, and he had spent most of his time taking care of Phoenix Master Qiu alone. That person was Xia Jingyu. You were all deceived by her. Quickly inform Alliance Master Su that there is something fishy about this woman. Phoenix Master Qiu struggled to get off the bed. Wu sensed that this matter was grave, so she asked gravely, Phoenix Master Qiu, what happened to her? Phoenix Master Qiu replied quickly. Quickly inform Alliance Master Su that I was injured by this woman. What? She was the one who injured you? The Heavenly Law Alliance's people were all startled. On that day, Phoenix Master Qiu had taken the unconscious Xia Jingyu and escaped from the warship to meet up with Suyu. However, when Suyu arrived, Phoenix Master Qiu was still unconscious, and she had only woken up today. She was unexpectedly injured by Xia Jingyu, who was also unconscious. How is this possible? Let alone the fact that Miss Xia was unconscious. Even if she wasn't, why would she injure you? Old Chen rushed over and asked in disbelief. However, Phoenix Master Qiu's next words caused everyone to stiffen. Chapter 714, 2015. Eliminating pornography and illegal publications, it wasn't difficult to discern the Phoenix Master Qiu's anger, fear, and anxiety from her words. Upon hearing this, everyone's expressions changed. This was especially the case for Elder Zhou, as he, Xia Jingyu, and the Phoenix Master Qiu were all being treated in the Yangxin Palace. How could he accept that the unconscious Xia Jingyu was the culprit behind all of this? Zi Yunxiang also shook her head in shock. She couldn't believe that Xia Jingyu's identity was fake. What was even more shocking was that Xia Jingyu had continuously attacked the Phoenix Master Qiu in front of Elder Zhou. Every time she woke up, she would immediately fall into a deep sleep. Since the Phoenix Master Qiu knew that Suyu was the Alliance Master, it was obvious that she was awake at some point while she was unconscious. Hence, she must have understood the situation in the outside world. What I said is absolutely true. Quickly inform the Alliance Master Su the Phoenix Master Chiu urged anxiously as she surveyed the surroundings. It was only now that she discovered that their surroundings were strange. Where are we? Where is the Heavenly Law Alliance's warship? She didn't know that the Heavenly Law Alliance's warship had been destroyed a long time ago. Phoenix Master Chiu, please explain clearly that the Alliance Master Su's current situation is quite special, and we mustn't disturb him. Everyone's hearts sank. Now, Su Yu and Xia Jingyu were fighting side by side. If the Phoenix Master Chiu's words were false, the two of them would turn against each other, and they wouldn't be able to face Gu Taishu together. Hence, even though the current situation was quite urgent, they still had to verify the facts. They couldn't just say a few words. The Phoenix Master Chiu wasn't aware of the situation in the outside world, so after she calmed down, she began to clearly recall what had happened that day. That day, I received Su Yu's request to take Xia Jingyu and Elder Jiu away from the warship ahead of time. Su Yu said that a great change might occur in the warship, so he didn't want them to be threatened by Fu Songshan. The Phoenix Master Chiu explained. The Phoenix Master Chiu explained the reason for that day. I agreed, so I brought them to the designated location and waited for Su Yu's arrival. However, I didn't expect that while we were waiting, Xia Jingyu would wake up. As she spoke, fear appeared in the Phoenix Master Chiu's eyes. But I saw with my own eyes that a powerful soul materialized on top of Xia Jingyu's head. That aura was even more terrifying than a fairy realm's. After that, she entered Xia Jingyu's spirit cap and took control of her body. Then she attacked me, saying that since I saw through her, she couldn't let me live. In the end, she struck my abdomen with her palm, seriously injuring me and making me unconscious. When the crowd heard this, they all gasped. Even a fairy realm expert wouldn't be able to materialize his soul. Only Elder Jiu's eyes flickered with a strange light. According to what Su Yu had said when he had examined her injuries, his palm strike could have easily taken the Phoenix Master Chiu's life. But he had restrained himself at the last moment, which was why he had managed to injure her, but not kill her. Since they wanted to silence her, why did they leave Phoenix Master Chiu alive? From this point of view, it was truly illogical. Later on, I gradually woke up from my deep slumber, and my consciousness gradually cleared. However, just as I was about to wake up, this woman appeared again and channeled power into my body, causing me to continue to fall into a coma. It was only until recently that she did not appear again that I was able to break free and regain consciousness. After Elder Jiu heard this, he understood what the Phoenix Master Chiu had said. This was because Xia Jingyu had disappeared from the Heavenly Law Alliance after meeting Su Yu alone. During this period of time, the Phoenix Master Chiu hadn't channeled the all-creation power into her body in time, which was why she had gradually regained consciousness. It's really her. Zi Yunxiang bit her red lips, while anxiousness appeared in her eyes. I will go and inform him to be on guard against this sinister woman. However, someone had already taken a step ahead of her and flew into the sky. Let me inform him, Wu Aoyue said coldly, without even turning her head. Her face was filled with anxiety. At this moment, Su Yu's back was facing that detestable woman. In the outside world, Siener's Death Phoenix Constitution had displayed its might, and she had killed all of the late-stage fairies with just a single sentence. This had greatly shocked Su Yu. The harmless little girl was the most frightening existence. Brother Su Yu, after she had killed the second Saint Master, Siener's cold expression disappeared. When she turned around, she saw that Su Yu was looking at her with a burning gaze. Siener enjoyed his surprised gaze, which she had never seen before. At the same time, she also felt somewhat embarrassed. She lowered her head and snuggled into Su Yu's embrace. She was both excited and shy. Brother Su Yu, did I help you? She had always been the one to cause trouble for Su Yu, but now she had helped him. Was this really what she was thinking? Su Yu's heart was filled with tenderness, and he stroked her head. Yes, it was because of you that I was saved. Thank you, Siener. Siener's heart started thumping crazily when she heard him call her Siener. It was only at this moment that she realized that she and Su Yu were already husband and wife. Xia Jingyu, who was looking at this scene from afar, was slightly startled. Complex emotions appeared in her eyes. After a long while, She calmed down and regained her calm demeanor. Shouldn't we first deal with the great threat in front of us? Venerable Fu Gue might come back at any moment. Such a timely reminder caused Siener's face to redden, and she subconsciously left Su Yu's embrace. When Siener looked at Xia Jingyu, who was standing in the distance, she felt somewhat uncomfortable. For some unknown reason, her close friend, who she had talked about everything with in the Xinyu prefecture, now gave her a strange feeling. Su Yu also looked at her and revealed a faint smile. It seemed like he was relieved from his burden. Xia Jingyu shuddered. She seemed like she had discovered something from his smile. "You're right. Let's deal with the person in front of us first." Su Yu turned around, while his expression was ice-cold. Xia Jingyu also flew over and stood on Su Yu's right. Qin Xiner also stood calmly on Su Yu's left. All of them were coldly looking at Gu Taishu. The three of them had never fought an enemy side by side like they did today. One of them was Su Yu's wife, while the other was his former lover. In the Jinlong's final moments, they had joined hands to fight the enemy. Was this fate's arrangement? Gu Taishu, who had lost 30 of his subordinates in a single breath, wore an unsightly expression. He was in a favorable situation, and he would be able to kill Su Yu in less than half a cup of tea's time. However, who would have expected that a strange woman, who could foresee the future, would appear, followed by an even more terrifying Death Phoenix constitution, who could kill all of the late-stage fairy realm experts by herself. Even Gu Taishu shuddered in fear when facing such a strange death energy. Good, very good. Foreseeing the future and the Death Phoenix constitution. Su Yu, you really hid your strength well. You actually managed to get two such stunning women by your side. Gu Taishu seemed like he had just recalled the ambiguous relationship between his fiancée, Lu Chuyi, and Su Yu, which made him even more resentful. But do you really think that you can kill me like this? Gu Taishu's eyes flashed with pain. He took a deep breath and took out the Emperor Tower again. This time, he didn't activate the Emperor Tower. Instead, he pointed at the ancient sword that had been stuck in the Emperor Tower for countless years. A tower, a sword, and a person. This was Su Yu's first impression of them. Among the three of them, the most terrifying one was undoubtedly the ancient sword that contained the power to destroy everything. Gu Taishu didn't pull out the sword when he was being suppressed by Su Yu. Now, facing the three people who could completely destroy them, he was finally going to pull it out. The dragon-slaying fairy sword is a fairy artifact. This sword can kill all almighty divine masters below the all creations level, Xia Jingyu said calmly. She, who could foresee the future, knew everything. A fairy artifact that could kill anyone below the all creations level with a single sword strike? A fairy artifact was a peerless weapon that could only be mastered by all creation's old monsters. Its power was beyond imagination. This sword strike was enough to end all of their lives. Gu Taishu's finger made the ancient sword tremble. Countless cracks appeared on the surface of the scabbard. Then, with a bang, it shattered completely and turned into dust. Surrounded by dust, a blood-red long sword floated quietly in the air. The blood-red color wasn't the original color of the sword. It was blood that hadn't dried up yet. A terrifying aura was emitted from the fresh blood. The entire sword was stained with terrifying blood, whose blood hadn't dried up after such a long time. The last time I pulled out the sword, I killed a half-step all creations. His blood hasn't dried up yet, Gu Taishu murmured softly as he held the hilt of the sword with one hand. His tone was profound. The blood of the half-step all creations. No wonder it couldn't be destroyed by the passage of time. It was still emitting a shocking aura. Yesterday's chapter will be updated tonight. The Yuewen group will actively cooperate with the relevant departments and submit information. Chapter 7:15. Then, he looked at Su Yu and the others sharply. This sword can only be used to kill almighty divine masters. It needs to be nurtured in the Emperor Tower for 10 years before it can be used once. I wanted to leave it for the King of Darkness, but I didn't expect that you, Su Yu, would be the one who hid your true strength. You also have a woman with an amazing constitution. Fine, I will make an exception today. I will use this sword on you, a half-fairy. The three of you will die together under this sword. One is a pure divine decree practitioner, one is a future seer, and the last one is a phoenix of death. Gu Taishu, who was holding the dragon-slaying fairy sword, looked more and more fierce. His sleeves fluttered in the wind, and his black hair danced in the wind. The blood-red dragon-slaying sword let out a mournful dragon cry, as if it was a black dragon that had been killed by the fairy sword. The blood-red light of the dragon-slaying sword became more dazzling. Wherever the light shone, the sword energy would be there. Cut! Gu Taishu uttered coldly as he held the blood-red sword and drew a line in the sky. It looked like an ordinary sword, without any fancy moves, techniques, or power. However, the line was filled with an indescribable aura. It seemed like the sword was controlled by the heavens, and there was nowhere to hide from it. They could only face it head-on. The pupils of Su Yu and the others dilated, as they could feel the destructive aura of the sword. In the dragon abyss, Elder Joe's expression changed drastically. Don't face it head-on. Run. This is a fragment of a fairy artifact used by the Blood Emperor. It can severely injure even an all-creation being. Run. He clenched his fists anxiously. Even without his reminder, Su Yu and the others knew that they were in great danger. Let me handle it. At this critical moment, Qin Xiener stuck out her chest, and her big eyes were filled with the aura of death again. She fixed her eyes on Gu Taishu's figure. Her eyes were cold, and her aura was solemn. It was as if she had become another person. She had turned from a cute little fairy into a death deity in the blink of an eye. Die! Qin Xiener uttered one word. Then, a formless power descended from the sky and entangled Gu Taishu. This time, Su Yu seized the opportunity to observe with his soul eyes from afar, and his pupils contracted slightly. With his soul eyes, a black phoenix that could not be seen with the naked eye appeared around Gu Taishu. His entire body was surrounded by a terrifying, deathly aura. His eyes were as indifferent as that of the Grim Reaper, as he circled around Gu Taishu. The deathly aura on his body quickly seeped into Gu Taishu's body, extinguishing his life force. All of the later stage fairies were killed just like that. His life force was destroyed by the aura of death, and even his soul was extinguished. Although Gu Taishu was strange, he was very different from the second Saint Master. He could actually sense the presence of the Black Phoenix. You dare to cause trouble under the Dragon Slayer sword? Gu Taishu snorted coldly, and the Dragon Slayer sword in his hand suddenly shone with a dazzling blood-red light. Under the illumination of the blood-red light, the Black Phoenix that was circling Gu Taishu disappeared like smoke in the blood-red light. Xian let out a muffled groan. Her face instantly turned red, and the corner of her mouth flowed with a dazzling red. The Black Phoenix was destroyed, and Xian suffered a backlash. Xian, Su Yu's heart tightened, and he immediately went forward to hug her. I'm fine. Xian held back a mouthful of blood as she replied. I'm sorry. His fairy sword was too powerful, and I wasn't able to help you. After Su Yu confirmed that Xian's blood had just been shaken, and that her life wasn't in danger, he felt relieved. As he looked at Gu Taishu once again, Su Yu's killing intent surged. You deserve to die. Gu Taishu sneered at Su Yu's threat. You still want to kill me? You can dream about it after you enter the underworld. As he spoke, the sword's aura descended with a loud rumble. This sword strike was capable of destroying everything. It was about to end. Su Yu didn't have any hope of winning against this sword strike. Even with the cultivation of a half-fairy, Su Yu had already tried his best to persist until now. Even in the JoJo world, using the power of a half-fairy to fight against a grade 9 fairy and force him to use his ultimate weapon was shocking. The disparity between their cultivation and magical treasures was too great, and Su Yu was powerless to reverse the situation. However, as he looked at the two women on his left and right, especially Xia Jingyu, Su Yu's gaze became resolute. Xian Jingyu, both of you should retreat, Su Yu said softly. As the blood-red light shone on him, he revealed a gentle smile. Xian who was no longer in a daze, seemed to have sensed the resolute look in Su Yu's eyes. Brother Su Yu, let's escape together. Don't make any more sacrifices. Suyu stroked her head and said softly, where can we escape to in this world? Suyu, don't mind dying, but you and Jingyu can't die. As he spoke, Suyu looked at Xia Jingyu with a faint smile. His smile made Xia Jingyu's heart throb, and her indifferent face became conflicted. Jingyu, you must live well. Suyu took a deep look at Xia Jingyu and pushed Sienna away. He then turned into a beam of light and flew toward the blood-red sword. As long as I'm here, they won't die. Suyu's eyes flickered as he clenched his teeth, and two figures appeared around him. Second-grade clone technique. Each of the two clones condensed an origin. The Scarlet clone had condensed an extreme fire origin in its palm, while the other clone, whose whole body was surrounded by lightning, had mastered the lightning origin. At the same time, Suyu's body emitted a chilly aura. An origin was no stranger to fairies. Its power was mediocre, and it couldn't cause any harm. However, in Suyu's palm, it was like a withered tree that had come back to life. Fusion of the origins. Suyu clenched his teeth and controlled the two clones. Each of them mastered an origin and fused it with the ice origin of his main body. Ice, lightning, and fire. The three completely different origins fused together in an extremely delicate manner, forming a slowly rotating tricolored flower. The petals were delicate and beautiful, and their veins were clear and distinct, just like a real flower. However, the aura emanating from the flower made people feel extremely uneasy. When the blood-red sword energy encountered the aura emanating from the flower, it started to melt. It's this move again. Gu Taishu's face became gloomy. He had experienced this move's power before. The ordinary-looking origins, after fusing with them in his hands, possessed an unimaginably terrifying might. Die! At this critical moment, Gu Taishu clenched his teeth and slashed down with his sword. Suyu's eyes widened as he shouted, "Go!" The blood-red sword swept away everything in its path and struck the tricolored flower. Puff! With a soft sound, the tricolored flower shattered, and a terrifying storm that engulfed the surroundings erupted from within. Regardless of whether it was the power of the blood-red sword, Gu Taishu, or Suyu, they were all engulfed by the storm. The power of the sword was shattered by the crazy explosion, turning into countless scattered and weakened sword energies that swept out in all directions. Bang! 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 The concentrated sounds of collision came from Suyu's body. The weakened sword energies bombarded Suyu's eternal stone king armor like a torrential storm. The six directional ruler's green radiance flickered continuously, blocking the scattered sword energies. However, there were too many scattered sword energies, and only a small portion of them could be blocked. Every time the sword energy landed on the Eternal Stone King armor, it left a dent. This was one of the few times that the Eternal Stone King armor had been damaged, and this was only after the sword energies had been shattered. Whether the Eternal Stone King armor could block a full sword attack was still a question. However, the Eternal Stone King armor, which had saved Suyu's life several times, finally revealed its weakness after the concentrated destructive attacks. There was a bowl-sized hole on his abdomen. This was the Eternal Stone King armor's only weak point, and it was finally hit by the concentrated attacks. A sword energy pierced through the hole and struck Suyu's abdomen. The terrifying sword energy ignored Suyu's body and forcefully penetrated his abdomen. With a dull sound, Suyu's dantian in his abdomen was completely penetrated. The powerful sword chi was still destroying all the vitality in his body, shredding his few remaining lives. Suyu's body was like a fallen leaf that was being attacked by the sword energy. Suyu's eyes reflected the distant blue sky, as well as vague cries. He couldn't tell if they were coming from the sky or from the ground. Sensing the situation in his body, Suyu knew that this would be the end. Is this the end? Suyu sighed bitterly in his heart. He glanced at the clouds out of the corner of his eye and saw that Xia Jingyu was safe and sound. He smiled in relief and said, "I'm finally free." She owed Qin Sienna a promise, so she had married her. She owed Xia Jingyu a lifetime, so she had used her life to protect her. Thus, Both their grudges had been resolved. In the Dragon Abyss, Elder Gio suddenly understood why Suyu was so determined to fight Gu Taishu. It turned out that he had wanted to die a long time ago. He had given his status to Qin Xiener and his life to Xia Jingyu. Both of them had been settled, so they didn't know each other anymore. No. Amidst the chaos, a shout suddenly entered his ears. Xiener's petite figure quickly enlarged in his eyes. She caught up with him and hugged him just as he was about to fall into the sea. "Brother Suyu." Xiener's eyes widened when she saw Suyu's body, which was covered in wounds and was on the verge of collapse. Her eyes were filled with tears as she cried mournfully, "Don't die. Without you, what is there for me to look forward to?" The mournful cries were the truest feelings of that young heart, the first love. Suyu wanted to speak, but his body, which was on the verge of death, couldn't even utter a single word. He opened his mouth, but couldn't close it. Even his eyelids couldn't support his eyelids, and his vision became more and more blurry. "No." Xiener let out a heart-wrenching cry as she gathered vital energy in her hands and poured it into Suyu's body. She was trying to save his life. However, the existence of the sword energy caused her vital energy to dissolve like a clay ox entering the sea. Her tears, which were as big as pearls, fell unceasingly. They were beautiful and mournful. No matter how much Xiener poured her vital energy into him, it was still useless. Suyu felt a warmth in his heart. Dying in Xiener's arms wasn't a wasted trip. He extended his hand with great difficulty and stroked Xiener's cheek. He then said with great difficulty, "Don't cry. I'm not dying. I'm just returning, like a fallen leaf returning to its roots." Xiener wept as she laid her head on Suyu's chest. She was like a child who had just lost the most important family member in her life. There was only desolate weeping in the world. The listeners were moved. Suyu's world became more and more blurry. He tried his best to move his eyes and look in Gu Taishu's direction. He was still standing in the same place, but his whole body was covered in wounds. He wasn't any better than Suyu, and he was only left with one last breath. The dragon-slaying sword in his hand had lost its blood-red luster and was falling down like a piece of scrap metal. Swoosh! A purple light penetrated Suyu's 9-jade spiritual pearl and caught the falling sword. It then flew back and landed on Suyu's chest. It was the little Kylin, which had a special liking for treasures. It bared its teeth in excitement because it had snatched a fairy artifact's fragment, and it was dancing happily on Suyu's chest. When it lowered its head, it suddenly noticed that Suyu's condition wasn't right. It blinked its gem-like eyes. It rubbed Suyu's neck with its small head, but it found that Suyu didn't move at all. The little Kylin scratched its head with its small claws, and its eyes were filled with doubt. It didn't understand Suyu's condition. It looked at the weeping Xiener, then looked at Suyu, who was covered in blood. It seemed to have understood something, so it lowered its head and sniffed Suyu's chest. It seemed like it had smelled that Suyu's life was about to pass away. Its gem-like eyes froze, and its whole body stiffened. The fairy artifact in its mouth fell silently, and its eyes were fixed on Suyu. Gradually, tears welled up in its eyes. After it came back to its senses, the little Kylin jumped next to Suyu's head, stuck out its pink tongue, and licked Suyu's cheek. It knew that its master didn't have long to live. Suyu had just returned from another place. Too many things had happened in October. He had thought that his marriage would delay the update, which had already affected the novel. He didn't expect that the novel would be blocked for half a month, and his popularity would plummet. He didn't even look at the subscriptions, as he was afraid that he wouldn't have the confidence to continue writing. He didn't even know how many chapters he had missed, but he guessed that he should have at least 200 chapters. He didn't know how to make up for it. Now that he had gotten married, he felt much better. He would find a way to make up for it, and everything would start tomorrow. The plan was to write 10 chapters tomorrow. Considering the speed of typing, or if there was something going on in the middle, the minimum would be 5 chapters. They would strive for 10 chapters. If they could really write 10 chapters, they would ask for votes. It seemed like it had been a long, long time since they had asked for votes. Chapter 716. Suyu, you still have to die first. Some people were sad, while others were crazy. Gu Taishu, who was seriously injured and on the verge of death, laughed ferociously. You can die in peace. I will send your 2 women on their way later so that you won't be lonely in the underworld. Suyu had almost died during the collision in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. This time it was the same. Suyu had been defeated in both of their previous exchanges, and this time he was thoroughly defeated. A hint of mockery flashed in Suyu's eyes. As he spoke, a flag the size of a palm suddenly rose from the sea where Gu Taishu was. The flag fluttered in the wind, and a black light flashed. The scene around Gu Taishu was like an illusion, quickly turning into a chilly snowfield. In the snowfield, Gu Taishu had lost his cultivation and was reduced to a mortal body, shivering in the chilly wind. The Ice Soul Divine Dream spell? Gu Taishu was shocked. As someone from the 18 Blessed and Heavenly Lands, how could he not know this spell's name? The 18 Blessed and Heavenly Lands' first illusory spell. He had never expected that Suyu would leave behind such a spell before his death. When did he set it up? Ever since he had appeared, the 2 of them had been fighting, so he had no time to set it up. The only possibility was that he had set up this flag a long time ago as a last resort. Such a meticulous plan made Gu Taishu's heart skip a beat. He knew that he had to find the spell's weak point immediately and leave it. Otherwise, he would be in danger. Gu Taishu looked around, trying to find the spell's weak point. In the eyes of the outside world, Gu Taishu was standing far away, motionless, like a wooden pillar. I should take this chance to kill him. Suyu exhaled with difficulty. Gu Taishu was in the illusory spell, so it was the best chance to kill him. Sienna raised her head and wiped away her tears. Her eyes, which were like precious gems, were filled with unforgettable hatred. Why? Why did you mess up our lives? Sienna clenched her fists tightly, and her eyes were ice cold. Brother Suyu went through so many hardships, and he almost died many times. All he ever wanted was to have a clear conscience and never owe anyone anything. What enmity do you have with us? Why do you have to kill us? It seemed like he was shouting and crying, as if he was expressing all the injustice Suyu had suffered in his life. If your world wants Brother Suyu dead, I, Qin Sienner, swear that I will destroy your world with my remaining life. The delicate Qin Sienner was like the Grim Reaper at this moment. She was cold and merciless. A cold aura that had never appeared before appeared in her eyes. At the same time, the aura of death also appeared. Die. I want all of you to die. Qin Sienner roared with hatred in her heart. The obscure power of death descended between heaven and earth, enveloping Gu Taishu with a loud rumble and dragging him into the abyss of death. Without the dragon-slaying celestial sword, Gu Taishu would have perished in the world just by relying on his physical body. Pa! Suddenly a crisp sound rang out. The black phoenix that had descended upon Gu Taishu's head was struck by the nameless divine power and dissipated with a whimper. At the same time, a ghastly aura that seemed to come from the depths of hell slowly spread out and dispersed the black phoenix. I have just left for an hour, yet the situation has already turned around. It's really beyond my expectations. A person wearing a yellow robe suddenly appeared in the empty space. His whole body was emitting a ghastly aura, and he seemed extremely terrifying. It was Venerable Fu Gue. He had come back at the last moment. Sienna suffered another backlash, and she groaned softly before she staggered and fell on Su Yu's chest. Even though she was facing a divine master's boundless pressure, there wasn't any fear in her eyes. She was just indifferent and austere. The Death Phoenix's body. TSK. I really didn't expect that the Death God's body, which never appeared in JoJo, would appear in the Jinlong continent. Venerable Fu Ge examined Qin Sienner with great interest, while greed flickered in his eyes. Such a divine body will be wasted on a lad like you, so I will pass it on to you. Venerable Fu Gue spoke sinisterly, while licking his lips excitedly. I just happen to cultivate a magical technique that allows me to devour inherited bloodlines. Lad, you have really given me a great gift. Venerable Fu Ge, who is well versed in the ghost path, had walked much further on the path of blood cultivation than ordinary people. Thus, devouring other people's inherited bloodlines was a heaven-defying magical technique for him. Qin Xian'er's gaze was resolute, while her silver teeth were dyed red. She looked at him coldly and said, "I would rather be fed to a dog than allow an otherworldly person like you to have your way." Venerable Fu Gue revealed a sinister smile and said, "It's not up to you to decide." As he spoke, he waved his hand at Qin Xian'er, while 5 hideous ghost heads flew out of his sleeves and charged at Qin Xian'er. The ghost heads were ugly and emitted a dense, ghostly energy. Their whole bodies emitted a rotten aura, while they emitted an aura that could crush all fairies. Each of the ghost heads was at the level 9 fairy realm. Even a single level 9 fairy Gu Taishu had almost killed Su Yu, let alone 5 of them. When they appeared, everyone, including the people in the Dragon Abyss, despaired. They didn't even need a divine master to attack them, as they still didn't have any chance of victory. The ghost heads opened their mouths and started biting Qin Xian'er, devouring her flesh and blood, while draining her of her blood essence. Qin Xian'er wasn't afraid of them, and her eyes were filled with a deathly aura as she stared at the ghost heads. However, when she uttered the word die, the ghost heads weren't affected in the slightest, and they pounced at Qin Xian'er. The Death Phoenix's body is capable of taking a living being's life. But how can a dead ghost head take its life? Lassie, it seems like you have run into your nemesis. Venerable Fu Gue revealed a strange smile. Qin Xian'er was taken aback by this, before she started laughing bitterly. "Brother Su Yu, I'm sorry. I will leave first, and I will wait for you down there." Qin Xian'er had a strong heart, and she was quite decisive at this moment. She would rather kill herself than be bitten to death by the ghost heads and have her bloodline power drained by them. However, before she could take any action, the 5 ghost heads suddenly sensed something terrifying, and they started shrieking and fleeing in all directions. But before they could flee, their ear-piercing shrieks came to an abrupt end. A wisp of gray sword chi pierced through the 5 ghost heads like a ray of light. It happened in the blink of an eye. Even Venerable Fu Gue was caught unprepared by such a sudden occurrence. As he groaned in pain, a wisp of blood seeped out of the corners of his mouth. The ghost heads had been destroyed, and he had suffered a backlash. What happened? Venerable Fu Gue's pupils contracted as he looked at the gray sword energy. He felt extremely restless. Evil energy? What a terrifying evil energy. Venerable Fu Gue's sinister smile disappeared, and his expression became grave. As he looked at the ordinary gray sword energy, he felt like he had run into his nemesis, and he started retreating. Even the Blood Emperor was afraid of a wisp of evil energy refined by Dark Su Yu, let alone an almighty divine master. "Lad, is this your trump card?" Venerable Fu Gue felt like he had fallen into Su Yu's trap. As a matter of fact, how could he have come back just when Gu Taishu was on the brink of death? He had been hiding in a corner when he had pulled out the dragon-slaying fairy sword to fight against Su Yu. Venerable Fu Gue was afraid of Su Yu's techniques, so he had waited until both of them had suffered heavy injuries before coming back to deal with the aftermath. Su Yu, who was on the brink of death, had unexpectedly left behind a terrifying trump card that had trapped Gu Taishu. It was only now that Venerable Fu Gue showed himself. He wanted to show that he owed Gu Taishu a favor, and he also wanted to take credit for killing Su Yu since the danger had already passed. However, who would have expected that Su Yu had left behind an even more terrifying evil energy? Venerable Fu Gue knew that it had been left behind for him. At this moment, he felt like he had been plotted against. How could Su Yu have overlooked the fact that there was another more terrifying person besides Gu Taishu? Venerable Fu Gue? The evil energy in the flag had been left behind for him. After the evil energy destroyed the 5 ghost heads, it weakened slightly, but it still had a terrifying might left behind, and Venerable Fu Gue could still feel the danger of death. Swoosh! The evil energy attacked Venerable Fu Gue at an extremely high speed, and even a divine master couldn't dodge it. Venerable Fu Gue's heart thumped wildly, and his several hundred years of cultivation experience told him that he was facing a true life or death crisis. He couldn't dodge it, nor could he face it head-on. As he surveyed the surroundings, his gaze locked onto Gu Taishu, who was trapped in the formation and couldn't budge. After a struggle appeared in his eyes for a moment, he clenched his teeth and flew over. "Sir, it's just a clone body, so please forgive me." At such a critical juncture, Venerable Fu Gue waved his hand and sucked Gu Taishu's clone out of the formation to his front. Gu Taishu, who had just escaped from the formation, was at a loss for what had happened. When he detected Venerable Fu Gue's aura behind him, he relaxed and assumed that his rescue had come. He looked at Suyu from afar and revealed a cold smile. "Suyu, everything has come to an end. You can't kill me, but I will kill all of your relatives and friends." However, when his voice just echoed, he realized that something was amiss. A wisp of evil energy, which made his hair stand on end, quietly passed through his body. Moreover, he didn't even manage to see the outline of the evil energy clearly before it penetrated his body. In an instant, his body cracked inch by inch like a piece of dead wood that had been burned out. Then it peeled off. Even after his consciousness died, he still couldn't understand what had killed him. The evil energy sword, which had killed Gu Taishu, became dimmer, and only a wisp of it was left, which then flew toward Venerable Fu Gue. Even though the crisis of death had passed, Venerable Fu Gue still didn't dare to be careless, so he revolved his whole body's divine power to deal with it. Bang! As a loud noise echoed, Venerable Fu Gue was sent flying back, as if he had been electrocuted. Blood gushed out of his mouth, while a large bloody hole appeared in his chest. His body was heavily injured, but he didn't lose his life. Venerable Fu Gue's whole body shivered as he barely managed to keep his life. It was too terrifying, and when he came in contact with that wisp of evil energy, he felt like a terrifying evil being was trying to devour him. If Gu Taishu's death hadn't neutralized most of the evil energy, even though he was a divine master, he would have surely died. Venerable Fu Gue's heart shivered for a long time, and when his gaze locked on Suyu once again, his fear and killing intent erupted like a flood. "You can't live. Die." When a divine master was angered, countless corpses would appear. However, before he could attack, the heavenly orchid silver bamboo's golden leaves sealed the dragon abyss opened once again. At that moment, a beautiful woman came out of the dragon abyss anxiously. Awful. Venerable Fu Gue's heart sank. They were going to hide in the dragon abyss. The heavenly orchid silver bamboo's golden leaves were extremely hard, and even if he used his whole power, he wouldn't be able to harm them. Chapter 717. Stop! Venerable Fu Gue shouted angrily, his voice echoing like thunder. It was obvious that he couldn't conceal his anger. Qin Xiener's despairing heart was suddenly filled with hope. As long as she had a chance, she would be able to save Suyu. "Thank you, Sister Jingyu. Hurry up and take him back to save Brother Suyu." Qin Xiener was so grateful that she started crying. Xia Jingyu was still holding their shoulders, but she just stood there. She didn't plan to escape. Instead, she looked at Qin Xiener with her bright eyes and revealed a meaningful smile. "He who said that I came here to save him." Xiener was startled by her words. "Sister Jingyu, don't cause trouble. The enemy is too powerful, so we shouldn't stay here." Bang! Xia Jingyu twisted her wrist, causing Qin Xiener to feel a sharp pain and squat down. "Sister Jingyu, what are you doing?" Qin Xiener endured the pain and asked in surprise. Xia Jingyu looked at the sky and laughed. Her laughter was filled with madness. "What am I doing? Ha ha! I'm obviously trying to separate you and make Suyu regret his actions." As she lowered her head, Xia Jingyu's eyes, which used to be as gentle as water, were now filled with madness. "Xiener, my good friend, why don't you ask your husband who he loves?" Xia Jingyu sneered coldly, while the corners of her mouth curled up into a playful smile. It seemed like she really wanted to see Qin Xiener's grief and sorrow when she found out that the person Suyu loved wasn't her. It seemed like only by doing so would she be able to relieve the resentment in her heart. However, What she didn't expect was that Siener's pale face was still calm, while a mocking smile appeared at the corners of her mouth. I obviously know who he loves, and it's you, Sister Jingyu. Such a reply was like a thunderbolt that struck Xia Jingyu's heart, causing her smile to stiffen. Even the heart of Su Yu, who was on his deathbed, shuddered. Did Siener already know about it? You already knew about it? Xia Jingyu's crazed expression disappeared, while confusion appeared on her face. When did you find out about it? Sienna laughed bitterly. It was a self-mocking laugh. Well, I found out that Lord Yu was Sister Jingyu. I understood. Yu's memories of Su Yu, as well as the Starry Sky Heavenly Book. Sister Jingyu used her blood, sweat, and tears to create this book of memories. Even before she died, she still wanted to entrust it to Brother Su Yu. Apart from this, what else could it mean? Qin Sienna had already known about Xia Jingyu's feelings for Su Yu. She, who was already mature and sensitive, understood what was going on. But on the surface, he still pretended to be ignorant and silently endured the bitterness in his heart. As for Brother Su Yu, he also likes you. As Qin Sienna spoke, she looked at Su Yu, while bitterness and loneliness appeared at the corners of her mouth. It's because Brother Su Yu looks at me like I'm at the horizon, and I can't see my own reflection in his eyes. It's because his heart is filled with someone else. That person can only be Big Sis Jingyu. Xia Jingyu's body stiffened. She didn't expect that Qin Sienna would know everything. A trace of emotion appeared in her eyes, but it quickly disappeared, and she regained her indifference. Since you are aware that it was you who stole my position and everything that belonged to me, you should understand your fate, right? Sienna revealed a relieved smile. There wasn't any resentment in her clear eyes, only an apologetic expression. Sienna nodded her head and said, I know, and that's why I already planned to return Brother Su Yu to you. I don't have any more regrets after marrying Brother Su Yu, and before I die, I can return him to Sister Jingyu. Qin Sienna then said, Sister Jingyu, I'm sorry. I knew that you were in love with each other, yet I still came between you. I'm really selfish, but I really like you. I like you a lot, and I like you the most. She then added, I like Brother Su Yu hugging me, patting my head, and spoiling me. I like Brother Su Yu's smile, words, and actions. I like everything about him. She then added, Forgive me for my selfishness. Now, you can take Brother Su Yu away, as he belongs to you. Qin Sienna smiled, but her eyes were filled with tears. A layer of black mist gradually appeared on the surface of his body, forming the outline of a phoenix. The phoenix flapped its wings, as if it wanted to leave Sien Er's body and fly into the boundless sky. Venerable Fu Gui, who was flying over, was startled. This is? In the dragon abyss, Zhou Yuanzhou's eyes flickered with shock. Is this the Death Phoenix? Rumor has it that if the bloodline of the possessor of the Phoenix of Death physique isn't pure enough, the moment the bloodline awakens, the possessor of the Phoenix of Death physique will quickly wither, and in the end, the possessor will die. Before Qin Sienna broke through to the fairy realm, the power of her bloodline did not awaken. It awakened immediately after she broke through to the fairy realm. These words were like a heavy hammer that hammered hard on everyone's heart. It was no secret that Qin Sienna was unable to break through to the fairy realm with the help of the cloud galloping horse. He had thought that it was because of Qin Sienna's unique physique that made it difficult for her to break through. But now, it seemed that it wasn't that she couldn't break through. Rather, Sienna knew that once she broke through, she would die. Therefore, he pretended that he couldn't break through and refused to do so. She just wanted to stay by Su Yu's side for a longer period of time. Even if it was just one day, it would be enough. But just one day was too short. When Su Yu's life was in danger, she finally took a step forward and activated her bloodline's power. Thus, her death was already within her expectations. Xia Jingyu felt as if she had been struck by lightning, and her eyes flickered while her heart trembled. Qin Sienna had already prepared herself for death. Even if this day hadn't come, she would have quickly left Su Yu's side and returned him to her. Now, it was just a few days in advance. Xia Jingyu loosened her grip and staggered back. She was in a daze. When Su Yu, who was on his deathbed, heard such a shocking matter, he forcefully regained his consciousness. Even though his vision was blurry, the petite person's figure shook the depths of his soul for the first time. He had let her down. He had let down a woman who loved him so deeply. It turned out that he had refused to break through just to stay by her side for a while longer. It was laughable that he had even given her the fairy pill to help her break through. Since when had a foolish man like him ever tried to probe her heart? She had always been lonely, and she had loved him out of loneliness. Even though she knew that Su Yu's heart was filled with another woman, she still pretended to be ignorant about it. She had always been lonely. Since the day the Xinyu prefecture had been destroyed, she had always been alone. She had loved Su Yu silently, endured her pain alone, and pretended to be naive alone. She had walked to this day alone. As for Su Yu, he had thought that he had given her warmth by accompanying Qin Xiener. Little did he know that Xiener had always been lonely. She had only pretended to be naive and happy to comfort Su Yu. She had always been happy. The one she had truly protected wasn't Qin Xiener, but Su Yu. Su Yu's heart was in turmoil, and he felt an unprecedented shock. It was the first time that Xiener's figure had appeared so clearly in his heart. She was the pampered princess of the Twilight Mountains, the little girl who had stored pills for him in the Fengwang Valley, the girl who had stored Dragon Abyss fruits for him in the Dragon Abyss of the 9 underworlds, and the bride who had sacrificed her life for him. All of these scenes were like a night sky in which the clouds had been blown away. The stars shone brightly, illuminating the world. They were like a lonely boat in the autumn rain, disappearing into the misty rain, leaving behind scattered ripples on the calm lake. His heart ached, he was moved, and he blamed himself. Countless emotions seeped into every part of Su Yu's heart. It turned out that he had once had such a girl in his life. However, as the death phoenix left her body, her life was like a flickering candle in the wind, and it was extinguished before Su Yu's eyes. Brother Su Yu, Sienna loves you, and she has always loved you. Tears welled up in Sienna's eyes. As the death phoenix left, her eyes gradually became dim, and they lost their luster and radiance. However, she still wore a faint smile on her face, a satisfied smile. This was because the last thing she saw was Su Yu, the Su Yu she had always loved. Sienna. Su Yu's heart was pounding, and tears rolled down his cheeks. There was remorse, self-blame, and indescribable grief in his heart. It was as if he had lost the most important thing in his life. As Su Yu roared in a low voice, he gently stroked the 9 jade spiritual pearl. A small and exquisite jade pagoda appeared in his palm. Inside the pagoda, there was a 9-colored pill that was enshrined like a Buddha. When the jade pagoda appeared, the whole Jinlong world's life force seemed to become denser. The life force around Su Yu was so dense that if one breathed it in, his body would explode and he would die. It was comparable to the world's strongest poison. As the life force engulfed him, Su Yu's lost life force started recovering at a shocking speed. His body, which had almost collapsed, was quickly stitched back together. Such a heaven-defying scene, which seemed to have been created by the world itself, was displayed in front of everyone. Just the pill's fragrance alone had pulled Su Yu back from the brink of death. His body's injuries had completely disappeared. What kind of pill is this? Venerable Fu Gui's pupils contracted in shock. The people in the Dragon Abyss were also shocked. They couldn't believe that there was such a pill in this world that could bring the dead back to life. Su Yu held the exquisite jade pagoda and stood up slowly. He looked at Xia Jingyu and said calmly, "Jingyu, I'm sorry. I wanted to die to repay your kindness, but I've changed my mind. I can't die just for Sienna." Su Yu walked over and supported Sienna. Her body, which was warm and gentle, gradually turned cold. Her life force had already been extinguished, and she had already died. Only the ancient divine pill, the fate-altering pill, could bring her back to life. Su Yu's gaze was filled with love as he hugged Sienna. It was as if he had returned to the Xinyu prefecture and was hugging the pampered young princess. "Sienna, I'm sorry for making you leave me for a while. I'll bring you back now." As he took the 9-colored pill from the pagoda, a shocking spiritual energy engulfed the whole world. It seemed like it was a powerful object that gathered the whole world's life force. Suyu flipped his palm over and pushed it into Siener's mouth. However, at this moment, a sweet fragrance assaulted his nose as a beautiful woman grabbed Siener's shoulder and pulled her away. Suyu's hand didn't manage to push the pill into Siener's mouth. Jingyu, what are you doing? Suyu was startled to see that it was Xia Jingyu who had captured Qin Siener. She was coldly looking at Suyu, and her face was filled with indescribable indifference. Chapter 718. The people in the Dragon Abyss were furious. At such a critical moment, Xia Jingyu actually obstructed the revival of Qin Siener. No one knew if the longer Qin Siener was dead, the longer it took for her to die, the more it would affect the effects of the heaven-reversing pill. If the time dragged on, the heaven-reversing pill would be ineffective. Wouldn't that mean that Qin Siener had died forever? Xia Jingyu, Suyu shouted in a deep voice. You can hate me, but why did you hurt Siener? She's innocent. Xia Jingyu's eyes grew colder. Innocent? He clearly knew that we were in love, yet he still snatched you away. Such a selfish person deserves to die. At this moment, Xia Jingyu gave Suyu a strange feeling, as if the person standing in front of him was a completely different person. Her death is not to be regretted. Don't even think about living past today. Today, I will kill both of you bastards. Xia Jingyu's killing intent was aroused, and her gaze became ice cold. As she raised her hand, a divine weapon appeared in her palm, and she thrust it at Suyu's chest. Suyu was shocked, and he revolved his vital energy to retreat. However, the moment he activated it, Suyu's heart turned cold. His true chi was gone. Not even a trace was left. He hurriedly looked into his body and was instantly stunned. His dantian had been penetrated by the dragon-slaying celestial sword. The remaining 2 true crystals had shattered. He had lost all of his true crystals. Apart from his fleshly body, he had lost his cultivation. Xia Jingyu's sword was merciless. It was filled with killing intent as it flew towards Suyu's vital parts. Wu Aoyue, who came to warn them, was 100,000 zhang away. She was unable to help him at all. Suyu was unexpectedly going to die at Xia Jingyu's hands. Clang! However, at the critical moment, a figure attacked. The sharp true chi easily shook off Xia Jingyu's sword. A cloaked figure stood in front of Suyu. Under the cloak was a gentle and refined face. He was in his early 30s, and his eyes were filled with wisdom. Traceless, the people in the Dragon Abyss heaved a sigh of relief. When they took a closer look, they were shocked. After Wu Hen obtained Suyu's help and advanced to the level 3 fairy realm, he injured Wu Aoyue and betrayed her, then disappeared. No one had expected that he would suddenly appear when Suyu had no one to help him. Young master, I came late. Please punish me. Wu Hen turned around and bowed respectfully, his eyes filled with emotion. In the past, he had received Suyu's orders and pretended to betray the Heavenly Law Alliance, while in fact, he had been lurking around the Heavenly Law Alliance. If Suyu suffered a mishap one day, he must definitely save Siener and Xia Jingyu. However, the way things had developed to this point was completely unexpected. In order to save Suyu, Siener died because of the power of her bloodline. Xia Jingyu had betrayed him and wanted to kill Suyu. Suyu's gaze was locked onto Xia Jingyu. His gaze gradually turned cold. Xia Jingyu, what are you trying to do? TSK, what a hindrance. Xia Jingyu glared at Traceless, who had suddenly appeared, and said coldly, What are you doing? Of course it's to take credit. Siener's corpse will be handed over to Venerable Fu Gue to refine her bloodline power, while your head will be handed over to the Central Prefecture's king. This way, I'll be able to choose again and become the Central Prefecture's king's concubine. Xia Jingyu said heartlessly, Thank you for letting me understand that everyone's heart is selfish. Thinking back on what I've done for you, it's really foolish and laughable. Now, I've woken up. Becoming the concubine of the Central Prefecture's king and using his power to pursue the pinnacle of martial arts is the fate I, Xia Jingyu, deserve. So he was shocked. Xia Jingyu wants to become the Central Prefecture's king's concubine? Suyu was startled for a long while, and his expression became gloomy. He didn't know whether she had said those words out of anger or if she really intended to do so. Jingyu, take advantage of the fact that you haven't taken the wrong step to exchange for Xiener's body. Even if I have to use my life to exchange for it, Suyu said in a deep voice. Xia Jingyu sneered coldly. Dream on. Now that you have lost your cultivation, you're just a cripple. So, what right do you have to negotiate with me? As she spoke, she turned her head around and looked at Venerable Fu Gue. It seems like you've seen enough. Don't you want to kill Suyu to atone for your crimes in front of Gu Taishu? He had used Gu Taishu's clone as a shield, and if he didn't kill Suyu, Gu Taishu wouldn't spare him. Do I need you to remind me? Venerable Fu Gue was startled, and his expression became gloomy, while killing intent appeared in his eyes. Although Xia Jingyu was also on his list of must-kill targets, he still had to kill Suyu. Awful. Young master, run away. Traceless was startled, since he had just witnessed an almighty divine master about to attack him. How could he still wait? He grabbed Suyu, turned around, and fled. As he fled, he said, Young master, as long as you're alive, there's hope. You have lost your cultivation, so you aren't a match for him. If you die now, we won't be able to take back Miss Qin's corpse. So, please bear with it. He could feel Suyu's killing intent, which almost disturbed his mind as he was taking him away. Suyu didn't struggle, even though a raging fire was burning in his heart, and even though his mind was muddled by his killing intent, which made him want to throw caution to the wind. However, his remaining reason told him that if he acted rashly at this moment, Xiener would really disappear from the world, never to come back. At this moment, Wu Aoyue also caught up to them, and she looked at Xia Jingyu with hatred. You ignorant woman! Suyu had a premonition that a great disaster would befall him, and that was why he had arranged for Traceless to save her and Qin Xiener. It could be imagined just how important Xia Jingyu was to him. But, in the end, Xia Jingyu had betrayed him mercilessly and wanted to use their lives in exchange for future glory and wealth. Such was the way to make people's hearts go cold. You want to leave? Xia Jingyu snorted coldly, then chased after him with her sword. Venerable Fu Gue quickly approached them, as if he had teleported. At such a critical moment, Su Yu's gaze became ice-cold, and he shouted softly, Small Kylan sword. As a purple radiance flickered, the small Kylan squatted on Su Yu's shoulder, and the dragon-slaying fairy sword in its mouth fell down. Su Yu extended his hand. Even though he had lost his cultivation, his first dragon body didn't suffer any harm. Even though the fairy sword was quite heavy, it wasn't difficult for him to hold it. Dragon-slaying fairy sword, attack. Suyu held the sword's hilt, while his gaze became ice-cold. Even though he didn't instill any vital energy into it, the sword still possessed an extremely powerful might, and just its sword intent alone was extremely powerful. A blood-red light beam shot out of the sword, and it flew toward Venerable Fu Gue, who was leading the way. Damn it! Even Venerable Fu Gue didn't dare to face it head-on, so he quickly retreated. A hazy light flickered above Xia Jingyu's head, and a small transparent person's figure appeared. It was a charming woman, and her whole body was transparent. Her pretty eyes were filled with deep resentment, and she was looking at Suyu from afar. When the blood-red light beam came at her, she swept it forward and sent it flying. Such a scene didn't escape Suyu's eyes. His expression became grave, and his killing intent became even more intense. Inspector Hong Wan, it's you. It was the all-creation old monster Hong Wan. She was one of the 18 blessed and Heavenly Land's 3 great all-creation experts. One of her clones had attached itself to Sheng Shulian's body, and it had appeared at the last juncture of the mysterious Heavenly Divine Pavilion, but it was unexpectedly destroyed by Dark Suyu. However, it seemed like a fragment of her soul had managed to escape by luck, and it had attached itself to Xia Jingyu's body. It was her who was controlling Xia Jingyu. Lad, since you destroyed my soul, I will make you suffer a horrible death. Hong Wan's gaze was filled with great resentment, and she wanted to chase after Suyu. However, she was delayed by the dragon-slaying fairy sword, and Wu Hin and Wu Aoyue had already brought Suyu back to the Dragon Abyss. Venerable Fu Gui's pupils contracted, and he sucked in a breath of cold air as he looked at the remnant soul above Xia Jingyu's head. Senior Hong Wan. Venerable Fu Gui's expression changed drastically. Hong Wan's gaze swept over Venerable Fu Gui, and her expression wasn't too arrogant. After all, she was just a remnant soul, and even if she wanted to be arrogant, she still had to consider her own situation. Fu Gui, summon more bright light guards, and you must destroy the seal and kill that lad. Hong Wan instructed him, while she grabbed the Emperor Tower, which had fallen from Gu Taishu's body, and threw it at him. Venerable Fu Gui was put in a difficult position. This, although Hong Wan was also the Central Prefecture's king's subordinate, she didn't have the right to meddle in the Jinlong continent's affairs, and she also didn't have the right to order him around. What? Do you think that killing this lad isn't an urgent matter? Hong Wan seemed like she could see through his thoughts, and she sneered coldly. My soul was destroyed by this lad. If you don't kill him in time, then don't even dream about looking for Shunichen in peace. What? Venerable Fu Gui was startled, and he wondered. Hong Wan's soul was destroyed by this lad? Hong Wan's soul was at least at the level of an almighty divine master, yet it was unexpectedly destroyed by this lad. As Venerable Fu Gui thought about the terrifying evil energy that he had almost lost his life, fear welled up in his heart. This lad really mustn't be allowed to live. If he didn't kill him, then he wouldn't be able to look for Shunichen in peace. Moreover, he felt somewhat guilty if he were to rely on just himself. Moreover, with Hong Wan's status, she was able to command more almighty divine master realm bright light guards. Fine, I'll do it right away. However, teleporting one of the 10 great bright light guards will consume 50% of the Emperor Tower's energy, and we have already consumed 60% of it. As such, we can only command almighty divine masters who aren't part of the 10 great bright light guards. Hong Wan raised her brows. I'm afraid that this isn't appropriate. If it's necessary, it would be better to let the Blood Emperor know about this lad, and let him make a decision. The Blood Emperor? Venerable Fu Gui looked embarrassed. To tell you the truth, the Blood Emperor seems to be injured, and he's in secluded cultivation. Even if he knows about this, he probably won't come here. Hong Wan was surprised. The Blood Emperor is injured? Who did this? Could it be the 2 old monsters of the 18 Blessed and Heavenly Lands? Lord Hong Wan, you must be joking. How could we know such a secret? Venerable Fu Gui was embarrassed, and he thought to himself, the Blood Emperor was injured, and this matter is detrimental to his and the Central Prefecture's prestige. So, how could he make such a big deal out of it? However, it's surely a powerful, all-creation old monster, Venerable Fu Gui added. It seemed like there wasn't anyone in the Central Prefecture who knew that the Blood Emperor was injured by Suyu. The Jiuzhou world has many experts, and it isn't impossible for the Blood Emperor to be injured. You just need to inform him about this matter, and it's up to him how to deal with it. Hong Wan instructed him. Venerable Fu Gui nodded, while his gaze hesitantly fell on Qin Xiener's corpse. You don't need to do anything to her, as I still need to study her, Hong Wan said mercilessly. Venerable Fu Gui was angry, but he didn't dare to say anything, so he left unwillingly. At this moment, Hong Wan looked at Xia Jingyu and wore a faint smile. Other people only know that you betrayed Suyu because you were controlled by me. If he knew that I didn't control you, and that it was you who took the initiative to betray him, I wonder what he would think. Xia Jingyu's beautiful face was calm and tranquil. It doesn't matter to me, as he injured me deeply, and if I continue immersing myself in it, I will only sink deeper and deeper. So, it will be better for me to get out of this quagmire and plan for myself. Chapter 719. The Dragon Abyss was deathly silent. After so many battles, Suyu had lost his cultivation and become an ordinary person. His power was even weaker than an ordinary fairy realm cultivator. Standing among the crowd, Suyu was like a wooden puppet, repeating Xiener's dying words over and over again in his mind. Without you, what is there for me to look forward to? Before Suyu's death, Sienna had been lying on Su Yu's chest and crying. "Brother Su Yu, Sienna loves you. I've always loved you." Before she died, she had smiled contentedly and fixed Su Yu's figure in her eyes. It was only now that Su Yu realized the deep loneliness in her heart. He had said that he would take care of Sienna and dote on her, but the truth was that he had never cared about her feelings. What he cared about was whether he had fulfilled his promise, not Sienna. So he was the selfish one. He could not forget Sienna's contentedly smiling face before she died. 2 streams of tears flowed down his cheeks. "Sienna," Su Yu murmured. In an instant, he seemed to have aged 10 years. On this day, he had lost the most important thing in his life, a woman who loved him deeply. That regret was even more painful than his Dantian's destruction and his martial path being severed. "Young master, Su Yu, Wu Aoyue, Zi Yunxiang, and the others came forward and called out softly. They wanted to comfort him, but they did not know what to say. "I need some peace and quiet." Su Yu waved his hand and left the crowd. He walked into the darkness of the dragon abyss alone and sat quietly on a small hill. After 2 hours, Su Yu was still sitting quietly. After 20 hours, Su Yu was still motionless. After a whole day, Su Yu was still motionless. As the days passed, Su Yu seemed to have become a stone statue, motionless. Beneath his eyebrows, his eyes had never closed. Even though they were bloodshot, his eyes still did not close. Su Yu's face was haggard, and his body was gradually becoming thinner. At the foot of the mountain, Wu Aoyue was quietly waiting. As she looked at the figure at the top of the mountain, her heart ached. Sienna's death was a great blow to Su Yu. She knew that Su Yu could not let go of Sienna's death. "Miss Wu, please let me pass." Zi Yunxiang's eyes were slightly red. Seeing Su Yu so depressed, she also felt terrible. Wu Aoyue shook her head from afar. Her face, which had become much thinner, was filled with an indisputable expression. "That won't do. Young master doesn't need your comfort. He needs yourself. If he can figure it out, he'll go down the mountain. If he can't figure it out, he will be trapped in the mountains. There is no point for you to go." As he spoke, he glanced at a group of women not far away. Princess Yun Yin and Yuro Mo Wu, the master of the Phoenix Cabinet, and Fairy Phone. They were all women who had left a deep mark in Su Yu's life. Su Yu's behavior made them restless. "Please tell Su Yu that Sienna is still waiting for him to save her. Please wake up quickly." Zi Yunxiang did not insist. She had lost the will to compete with Wu Aoyue in Su Yu's current state. Wu Aoyue nodded and slowly closed her eyes. However, right at that moment, Su Yu moved. The dust on his body dispersed and floated in the air. Su Yu's statue-like body was freed from the dust. His plain clothes were as fresh as ever, untainted by dust. His back was as thin and tall as ever. However, what was surprising was that his silver hair had lost its luster and had become snow white. His silver hair was now as pale as snowflakes. His hair had turned white overnight. He had too many thoughts in his heart, and his silver hair had turned white overnight. As he slowly stood up, his white hair fluttered in the wind. He looked exceptionally dazzling in the darkness. Come up here," Su Yu said. His voice was hoarse, as if his vocal cords had been destroyed overnight. Wu Aoyue's whole body shivered, and as she raised her head to look at him, she saw his white-haired back and old figure. She felt a sharp pain in her heart, but she endured it and leaped onto the mountain. She then knelt down on one knee and said, "Young master, please instruct me." Su Yu turned around. His previous spirited expression had disappeared, and all that was left was coldness and loneliness. It was as if Su Yu had lost all of his emotions in just one night. I want to reconstruct my Dantian. Can you help me?" Su Yu asked expressionlessly. "What? Reconstruct my Dantian?" Wu Aoyue was shocked, and she was overjoyed. "Young master, do you have a way to reconstruct your Dantian? Why didn't you tell me earlier?" She was extremely excited. As if Su Yu could reconstruct his Dantian, he would have an opportunity to go out and fight. He could then take back Qin Sienna and kill that ignorant woman, Xia Jingyu. "Young master, may I ask what you need my help with? I won't hesitate to help you." Wu Aoyue was quite curious, and she wondered. Is there something difficult about the Dantian reconstruction technique that he needs my help with? Su Yu's back was facing Wu Aoyue, and his white hair fluttered in the wind. Even his aged voice sounded faintly discernible. I need your primordialine. Wu Aoyue's eyes widened. She had never expected that Su Yu would need her primordialine. In other words, Su Yu wanted her to become his woman and hand over her body, which she had preserved until now. Wu Aoyue gritted her teeth while she was struggling inwardly. She respected Su Yu, and she was truly grateful to him. She was willing to entrust her life to him, and she couldn't get anything from him. After all, Su Yu already had a family, and he already had someone in his heart. If you aren't willing, then just give up. Su Yu sighed. This method is really too much for me. However, just as he finished speaking, the sound of clothes being taken off transmitted from behind him. When everything quieted down, a warm and smooth body came from behind him and pressed against him. Won't you regret it? You won't get anything from it. So you didn't turn around. Wu Aoyue wore a bitter expression, while her snow-white face became flushed. Young master, if you need it, then I will give it to you. Su Yu hesitated. Wu Aoyue sighed, then went to Su Yu and embraced him. Take it for Sienner. Bitterness filled her heart, as she had given her first time to another woman. For Sienner. Su Yu sighed inwardly, then placed her on the ground. As a pain groan echoed out, the two bodies joined together. After an hour, Su Yu was holding a white feather in his hand. It was the Fairy King's relic that Sienner had obtained, and it contained the Dantian reconstruction technique. It contained a large amount of primordial een and a small amount of Fairy King divine liquid, which could repair a destroyed Dantian. It could only be used if one's Dantian was destroyed completely. Previously, he had destroyed a single vital energy crystal, so it was useless to use it. Now that all of the vital energy crystals had been destroyed and his Dantian had been pierced, he could use it. Su Yu put on a layer of clothes, closed his eyes, and guided the primordial een, which had entered his body, to his destruction Dantian. At this moment, his Dantian was pierced from the front to the back. Any spiritual energy that entered it would be lost, unable to be stored or condensed into vital energy crystals. Therefore, the first step was to reconstruct a complete Dantian. Primordial een had nourishing properties. Many evil cultivators used primordial een to strengthen their Dantian and increase the amount of true chi stored there. Extracting the een essence was the most important thing to reconstruct the Dantian. Wu Aoyue was over 25 years old, and her body was still in perfect condition. After entering Su Yu's Dantian, it was guided by his will and covered the surface of the damaged Dantian. An ordinary person's Dantian is only the size of a fist. This reconstruction was to build a new Dantian on top of the originally destroyed Dantian. However, the space in the abdomen was limited, and it was impossible to accommodate a new fist-sized Dantian. Therefore, the reconstructed Dantian was to wrap around the original Dantian, just like how dumpling skin wraps around the stuffing inside. Therefore, the een essence needed to cover the surface of the old Dantian. Once the old Dantian surface was completely covered, the new Dantian would appear. Su Yu concentrated on guiding it and didn't waste even the slightest bit of the precious primordial een. He used all of it on the new Dantian. Time elapsed slowly, and the covering of the Dantian was carried out in an orderly manner. After 2 hours had passed, all of Wu Aoyue's primordial een had been covered. However, Su Yu couldn't help but sigh, as all of her primordial een was only enough to cover 1/100th of the Dantian surface. In other words, he would need 100 perfect women like Wu Aoyue to offer their vital energies to him. He was the Heavenly Law Alliance's master, and if it were in the past, there would have been enough perfect women willing to offer their bodies to him. But now, there were less than 100 of them in the Dragon Abyss. There were less than 10,000 young women, and only 1,000 of them were perfect. As for those who were willing to offer their bodies to him, there might not even be 100 of them. This technique requires an extreme body, and it seems like there is a reason behind it. If it wasn't for the evil cultivator's forceful methods, how could ordinary people find so many perfect women willing to offer their bodies to him? Su Yu sighed inwardly. This technique was feasible, but it was too difficult. Suyu, why don't I give it a try? A weak and bashful voice drifted into his ears. When he raised his head and looked over, he saw that it was Princess Yunyan. In the past, during the incident at the Lucian faction, Yunyan had been forced to live in the Yun family, never to show her face again. Suyu was startled, and when he turned his head around, he saw that Wu Aoyue had already left the mountain. Did Yue tell you? Suyu asked. Yunyan didn't dare to look at Suyu's eyes, so she nodded. Yes, I told her everything. I will come up first, as I didn't use all of my primordialine that day. So, I should be able to help you. Suyu hesitated. Yunyan didn't say anything, but just took off her clothes and leaned against Suyu's chest. She then said in a soft voice, Come on, as this isn't our first time. So, you don't need to hold back from hurting me. Suyu felt like he owed her even more, and after hesitating for a while, he laid her down on the ground. After an hour, Suyu continued guiding her. Yunyan's primordialine was far inferior to Wu Aoyue's, as she only had 1/10 of it. But Suyu still used it carefully. When he finished guiding her, there were already 2 women in front of him. Phoenix Cabinet's master, Fairy Foam. Suyu was startled. Fairy Foam smiled sweetly. I don't have any primordialine left, but my teacher still has some left. You don't need to be so courteous. After she spoke, she slowly descended the mountain. It turned out that she had accompanied the Phoenix Cabinet's master up the mountain to give her courage. The Phoenix Cabinet's master's face became flushed, and she spat softly. Fine, I will let you off this time. She didn't have enough primordialine, and it seemed like she only had a little more than Yunyan. Suyu's eyes were filled with worry. If he continued like this, he might not be able to successfully reconstruct his dantian. He could feel that the primordial een, which had covered his old dantian, was slowly dissipating due to the long delay. It was at this moment that 2 people rushed over. Enuro and Mo Wu? Suyu was startled, and his expression became gloomy. He then waved his hand and said, You 2 should leave the mountain. I'm not related to you, so I can't take your primordialine. Chapter 720. I should be able to help you. Don't forget why Lu Jun covets me. Enuro tucked her hair behind her ear and said in a gentle voice, I have een body. I was born with een essence, which is more than enough to resist hundreds of pure women. If you don't want more women to sacrifice themselves for you, you don't have to hesitate. Speaking of which, Lu Jun of the 100 Territories Alliance had spent 10 years trying to capture Enuro precisely because he coveted her powerful extreme een body. Suyu raised his brows. He vaguely remembered that Enuro indeed had such a body. While she was hesitating, Mo Wu raised her eyebrows. You're a man? Why are you so wishy-washy? Close your eyes. Don't talk. Little did she know that she was blushing. After Suyu muttered to himself irresolutely for a long while, he bowed to them and said, I owe Miss in a great favor, and I will never forget it. After saying this, Suyu closed his eyes and allowed Enuro to lead. Not long after, her smooth and warm body merged with his. Suyu furrowed his brows slightly. He had gotten quite a bit of primordialine, but it was still on the same level as Wu Aoyue's. Was Enuro's extreme een body only at this level? When he slowly opened his eyes, he saw another person. Mo Wu. Suyu was shocked. The person who had combined with him just now was not Enuro, but Mo Wu. What? Do you dislike it? Mo Wu raised her eyebrows. She looked very unfriendly, but her face was extremely red. Next to her, Enuro sighed with a complicated expression. Wu ergo. Your worries have been resolved. You can focus on cultivating in the future. This was Enuro's tacit consent. As she spoke, Enuro untied her belt and threw herself into Suyu's embrace. Her breath smelled like orchids as she said, I will leave both of us to you. After a round of lovemaking, Enuro left with a rosy face. As for Suyu, he had obtained a great amount of primordialine. Just as she had said, her primordialine energy was 100 times more than an ordinary virgin girl. The extremely powerful primordial een surged into Suyu's dantian like a flood and covered every inch of it. Just now, he was still worried that he didn't have enough een essence, but now he had a lot of it. It took Su Yu 6 hours to digest all of the primordialine. When he looked inside his body, he saw that every part of Su Yu's damaged dantian was covered with a thick layer of primordialine. From the outside, the location of the old dantian could no longer be seen. The primordialine dantian has been formed in the shape of a dantian. Next is the crucial second step, which is to use the immortal King Divine liquid to water the primordial dantian and transform it into a real dantian. So you took out a bottle of liquid droplets. This was the Fairy King's divine liquid that Sienna didn't bear to use for herself. Suyu had asked Wu Aoyue to research its specific composition for a long time, but she still could not figure it out. The only thing he knew was that this divine liquid had an extremely strong effect on cultivation. Other than that, he knew nothing. According to the feather, after mixing with the Een essence, it would have an unexpected effect. Time was of the essence, so Su Yu swallowed a drop of Fairy King Divine liquid without hesitation. Through his meridians, he guided it to his dantian, which was covered by the Een essence, and dripped it onto the outer layer of the Een essence. The fusion of the divine liquid and the primordial Een energy was like boiling oil meeting water. Unknowingly, Een essence became chaotic, flying in all directions. Immortal King Divine liquid was also splashed everywhere. The Een essence membrane that he had painstakingly formed showed signs of collapsing in the span of a breath. Moreover, a wave of pain that came from his soul was transmitted to Su Yu's heart. The terrifying pain made him feel like he was being reborn. It was extremely painful, and it was something that Su Yu had never experienced before. As Su Yu let out a pained roar, his voice reverberated throughout the dragon abyss, shocking everyone who didn't know what was going on. Is that Alliance Master Su's voice? What happened? He is such a resolute person, yet he is in such pain? Did he run into danger? The crowd rushed over to him, all of them extremely concerned. On the mountain, Su Yu was bearing the pain alone. His body was lying on the ground, twisting and rolling around. However, the pain didn't lessen. Instead, it became even more intense. Su Yu felt like his abdomen was about to be torn to shreds. This was an extreme pain. I must bear with it. This is the most crucial moment to reconstruct my dantian. If I give up now, all of my previous efforts will go to waste, and in Euro and the other sacrifices will be in vain. Moreover, no one will be able to save Sienna. Su Yu clenched his teeth so tightly that a cracking sound could be heard. Just like that, he was hovering between life and death, bearing the inhuman pain. It was only after the time it took to brew half a cup of tea that the pain gradually weakened. In the end, when the pain disappeared, Su Yu's whole body went limp, as if all of his energy had been sucked out. After his abdomen calmed down completely, Su Yu looked inside himself. He saw that the primordial Een that had covered his once damaged dantian had completely disappeared. What replaced it was a brand new dantian. It was still the size of a fist, and it was no different from the dantian that had not been destroyed. When he looked inside his dantian, a shocking scene appeared before him. Within his dantian, the 3 damaged vital energy crystals had been reborn with the Fairy King's divine liquid. Moreover, they were full and could be used to attack the fairy realm at any time. If this wasn't shocking enough, then what was even more shocking was that at the center of the 3 vital energy crystals, there was a dantian that was the size of half a fist. In the new dantian, there's also a small dantian. Moreover, in the small dantian, there were 3 identical vital energy crystals. According to the Fairy King's feather, the small dantian was the original damaged dantian, which had been compressed into the new dantian. The external dantian was called the heaven dantian, while the internal dantian was called the earth dantian. Both of them could store all kinds of energy, which meant that Su Yu had an extra dantian. Therefore, according to the Fairy King's feather, the reconstructed dantian was twice the size of an ordinary person's dantian. In this way, Su Yu's vital energy would be more vigorous than an ordinary person's, and the power of the same technique would be doubled. Such an effect could be considered a miracle. It was a pity that the Fairy King Divine liquid, which had an unknown composition, had already been used up so he couldn't create any more for others. As Suyu clenched his fists, he felt that he was much more powerful than before, and his confidence in saving Sienna had increased greatly. However, just reconstructing his Dantian was far from enough. Invite Phoenix Master Chiu over, Suyu instructed her. At the foot of the mountain, Wu Aoyue's face was flushed, and she was in high spirits. Although she had lost her first time, it seemed like she had obtained something, which made her heart feel content. She was in high spirits, and she left after receiving Suyu's order. While she was inviting Phoenix Master Chiu, Suyu held the dragon-slaying fairy sword in his left hand and a dim silver ball in his right hand. A fairy artifact fragment and the lightning avoiding silver pearl's embryo, Suyu muttered softly. The reason why the lightning avoiding silver pearl's embryo was only an embryo was that it lacked a spiritual nature. In order to evolve the embryo into a finished product, it needed a spiritual nature. The only way to infuse it with a spiritual nature was to obtain it from the fairy artifact fragment. Since ancient times, fairy artifact fragments were precious objects, and even fairies found it difficult to obtain them. Who would be willing to destroy them and extract their spiritual nature? However, it had an indescribable significance to Suyu, and this was why he chose to destroy it without the slightest hesitation. I learned from Wu Aoyue that extracting the fairy artifact fragment's spiritual nature is dependent on the use of one's soul power. People with innate soul talent can use their souls to forcefully extract the spiritual nature and imbue it into the lightning avoiding silver pearl's embryo. This requires one's soul to leave one's body, which is extremely difficult for ordinary people. However, it's quite easy for me, Suyu muttered softly. Suyu had already cultivated the heaven sun, gazing at air to the soul control realm, so it was quite easy for him to leave his body. As Suyu weaved signs with his hands, his soul came out of the top of his head and tried to grab the dragon-slaying fairy sword. His hand ignored the fairy sword's body and went into its body. It immediately came into contact with an ice-cold and slippery object, which seemed like a mudfish. It seemed like the object inside the sword had detected danger, and it started struggling, trying to escape from Suyu's hand. Don't waste your energy. Suyu shook his head, then clenched his fingers and forcefully pulled it out. A red dragon-shaped object, which was a foot long, was pulled out of the sword. A dragon? Suyu raised his brows. It was obvious that he hadn't expected that the dragon-slaying fairy sword's spiritual nature would take the form of a small red dragon. The unexpected spiritual nature made Suyu hesitate for just a moment, but he still imbued it into the lightning avoiding silver pearl's embryo. The dull lightning avoiding silver pearl immediately shone with a dazzling silver light, which illuminated the depths of the dragon abyss. As Suyu held the silver pearl, it seemed like he was holding the 9 suns. The lightning avoiding silver pearl, Phoenix Master Chiu, who had just recovered from her great illness, had arrived late with Wu Aoyue's help. When she saw the lightning avoiding silver pearl taking shape, she spoke in surprise. At this moment, the crowd, which had been startled by Suyu's roar, also came over. Alliance Master Su's cultivation seems like it has recovered, but why can't I see through it? It seems like a half-fairy, yet also seems like a fairy. Who cares if he's a half-fairy or a fairy? Alliance Master Su can just kill a fairy with a single hand. That's right. We all believe that Alliance Master Su can surely take back his wife. On the mountain, Suyu and Phoenix Master Chiu were sitting opposite each other. Phoenix Master Chiu, it's my fault for not protecting you well and letting you sleep for so long, Suyu said apologetically as he looked at Phoenix Master Chiu's thin face. Phoenix Master Chiu waved her hand at him. You saved me many times, and I'm already grateful to you. So why are you complaining? This is an urgent matter, so let's not talk about such trivial matters. Do you want to cultivate the evil-destroying silver eyes? Suyu wore a solemn expression as he waved his hand, and 3 materials appeared in front of him. The undead herb of the netherworld, the real dragon's blood, and the lightning avoiding silver pearl. Each of them was an extremely rare treasure, and it was unlikely that even Jojo could gather all of them. Suyu had spent a long time gathering all of them. This matter is related to the recovery of my eyes. So please teach me how to cultivate the evil destroying silver eyes. Suyu said sincerely. His eyes contained all of the divine nine-dragon cauldron's abilities, and after being sealed for such a long time, it was time to open them. Phoenix Master Chio nodded and wore a solemn expression. Okay, but there are some things that I didn't tell you before, as I assumed that you wouldn't be able to gather all three materials. But now, I have no choice but to tell you in advance. She then added, the evil destroying silver eyes is a tattered scroll that I obtained by chance. It contains a mysterious eye technique, which contains a wisp of the world's might. It can eliminate the remnant heavenly might in your eyes, so there isn't any problem with it. The problem is that this cultivation technique originates from an ancient real spirit. In other words, this is a pupil technique that only real spirits can cultivate. No one has ever tested it, so I don't know what will happen to humans after they cultivate it. She then added, you can decide for yourself what to do. A real spirit technique? Suyu's pupils contracted slightly. So you had heard about how terrifying real spirits were more than once or twice. The one that left a deep impression on him was that a dying real spirit had fallen into the 18 blessed and heavenly lands, and a group of all creation realm experts who coveted it had gone there and never returned. This technique was unexpectedly a real spirit's cultivation technique. However, there were also disadvantages to it. Humans and spiritual beings had different physiological structures, so there was no cultivation technique that could allow one to cultivate both of them. Even if one managed to cultivate it successfully, there would still be a huge problem. In order to regain his sight and recover the divine nine-dragon cauldron's abilities, Suyu would have to face this problem. After pondering it for a while, Suyu nodded firmly. I don't have a choice in the current situation, so I choose to cultivate it. He cultivated the evil destroying silver eyes and opened the seal. He regained control of the time, space, and pure divine decree. Moreover, ever since the seal had been sealed, the divine nine-dragon cauldron had been infusing many red liquid drops into his body. It was unknown whether the sealed abilities had changed or not. So he was looking forward to opening the seal. Chapter 721. It's within my expectations. It's just like your character, as you never feared difficulties. Phoenix Master Chio wasn't surprised by Suyu's reply. As far as she could remember, Suyu had always been someone who faced difficulties head-on, and he had never cowered. Furthermore, Qin Xin'er had perished. Under his calm appearance, there was definitely a suppressed madness. If he refused, Phoenix Master Chio would find it strange. Suyu, Phoenix Master Chio wanted to say something, but she hesitated. In the end, she stood up and let out a long sigh. Regardless of whether or not you can bring Xin'er back to life, I hope that you can think about yourself and live well. That's because Xian never hated you even before she died. After brushing past Suyu's shoulder, Phoenix Master Chio put down a blue jade box and quietly descended the mountain. At that moment, she couldn't suppress her grief any longer, and tears started rolling down her cheeks. Xian was her disciple. How cruel was it for her to witness Xian leave the world with great regret? Although she had left with a satisfied smile on her face, she still wanted to spend a long time with Suyu. Yes, I understand. Suyu replied softly. His hoarse voice was like that of an old man who had gone through the vicissitudes of life. It was emotionless and calm like a still lake. His calmness, in the eyes of the crowd, was not cruelty, but rather, his heart was like dead water. If there is no love in life, there is no sorrow in death. There was no longer anyone in the world that he was reluctant to part with. There was no longer anyone that he was excited about. There was no longer anyone that he clung to. There was no difference between life and death. If not for the thought of saving Xian in his heart, he would have already become a walking corpse. That night, when his hair turned white, was the best explanation. Suyu's face was expressionless as he grabbed the green jade box. When Zhang Xian touched it, he could feel a ferocious aura coming from it. There seemed to be a ferocious beast sealed within the exquisite jade box. Opening the jade chest, a bloody eyeball appeared in front of him. Its entire body was silvery white, and it was densely covered in traces of blood. It was as big as a lychee about the size of a human eyeball. The edges of the green jade box were worn and rusted. It had been there for many years. However, the eyeball in the box was still glistening and full of spirituality. Even the remaining blood vessels were vivid and lifelike, as if they had just been dug out. Even after so many years, there are no signs of decay. Is this eye really a real spirit eye? So you was sure that Phoenix Master Chio's words were true. This eyeball contained righteous energy, which was extremely effective against Een and evil. It wasn't without reason that it was called the evil destroying silver eyes. But where was the ancient scroll that Phoenix Master Chio had mentioned? After thinking for a moment, he sent a wisp of his soul energy into his eyeball. As soon as his soul entered, Su Yu's soul was engulfed by a powerful suction force and was sucked into an unknown space. The surroundings were filled with boundless darkness, and there was only a ferocious spirit beast that was 1,000 feet tall, crouching on the ground with its head facing the sky. His entire body was covered in red hair, just like the red-haired ghosts in the legends of childhood, giving off a bloody feeling. One of its heads was extremely ferocious. It had a pair of curved green and white horns on its head, which were sharper than any magical treasure that Su Yu had ever seen. It had a green face and fangs. Its face was as blue as frost, and 2 sharp fangs protruded from its huge mouth that took up 1/3 of its face. A pair of strange, silver eyes seemed to be smiling as it looked up at the sky. Even though it was a stone statue, Su Yu felt as if a great flood was crashing down on him. It was as if this extremely ferocious beast had come from the ancient times. That unusual impact was real to the point it caused one's hairs to stand on end and one's heart to tremble with shock. However, Su Yu's heart was like dead water at the moment. Is this an ancient real spirit? Su Yu looked at its silver eyes, lost in thought. Where's the scroll? Creak. At that moment, sensing Su Yu's approach, the left eye of the stone statue's silver eyes shattered and exploded into pieces. A mass of silver light shot out of the right eye, covering a region. Strange words that looked like tadpoles appeared before his eyes. The words were unfamiliar and did not seem like human words. Demon clan language? Su Yu murmured. During his half-year of isolation, he had comprehended most of the words and information that Yun Yazi had sent into his soul. The language of the Dragon Clan, the language of the Ghost Clan, the language of the Insect Clan, and the languages of the various clans that Yun Yazi had studied for his entire life were all in Su Yu's mind. Among them, Su Yu had comprehended most of the demon language. He recognized at a glance that the tadpole-like words in front of him were the demon language. The heaven-devouring demonic eye, one of the 9 great ancient eyes, can swallow evil and can swallow the sun, moon, and stars. It is an ancient taboo eye. Su Yu muttered in a strange tone, which did not sound like a human's. It was the voice of a demon. The heaven-devouring demonic eye. Phoenix Master Chio cannot understand the demon language, so she named it the evil-destroying silver eye because of its evil-destroying power. Su Yu felt relieved. Phoenix Master Chio had also tried to enter the soul space after obtaining the silver eye, but she could not understand the demon language. She could only rely on her intuition to know that the eye contained heavenly might, which could help Su Yu expel the remaining heavenly might in his eyes. She did not understand the demon language, but she was able to deduce the essential elements of cultivating this eye technique: the undead herb of the netherworld, the blood of a real dragon, and the lightning avoiding silver pearl. She must have put in a lot of effort, Su Yu said calmly. After reading the words, Su Yu understood. This technique was indeed used by the demon race, and there were 2 requirements to cultivate this eye. First, one had to have a real spirit body. Only a real spirit body could bear this heaven-devouring demonic eye. Second, one had to transplant a real heaven-devouring demonic eye. After reading this, everything became clear. This demon language had been created by other demons when they were trying to transplant the heaven-devouring demonic eye into their bodies. He had obtained a true heaven-devouring demonic eye and transplanted it into his body. The heaven-devouring demonic eye in the green jade box must have come from the hideous monster in front of him. It must have been obtained by some powerful monster and was about to be transplanted. However, for some reason, such an important item had been lost, and Phoenix Master Chio had obtained it. All of this had nothing to do with Suyu. After Suyu left the soul space, he understood Phoenix Master Chio's intentions. The true dragon's blood came from the true spirit and contained the true spirit's aura. The lightning-avoiding silver pearl was born from the heavens and earth. It was indestructible and could be used as a medium to transplant the heaven-devouring demonic eyes. On the other hand, the undead herb of the netherworld acted as a buffer, allowing the unyielding true dragon blood to fuse with the equally masculine lightning-avoiding silver pearl. Only then would it be suitable for humans to bear the heaven-devouring demon eye. Understanding the principle, Suyu immediately did as he was told. After grinding the undying grass of darkness, he extracted its juice and placed it in a container. Then, he placed a drop of true dragon blood and the lightning-shielding silver pearl into the container. At the same time, objects of masculinity should have exploded upon collision, but due to the existence of the undead herb of the netherworld, they were able to coexist and gradually fuse. Time ticked by. 6 hours later, the juice of the undead herb of the netherworld, the true dragon blood, and the lightning-shielding silver pearl had all disappeared. Only a silver ball, which was as big as an eyeball, was left in the container. The true dragon blood and the juice of the undead herb of the netherworld had all fused with the lightning-shielding silver pearl, forming a new object. This object was the one that contained the mysterious heaven-devouring demon eye. With a calm heart, Suyu held the heaven-devouring demon eye and touched it with the silver ink round pearl. The silver ink round pearl opened by itself and contained the heaven-devouring demon eye. The two round pearls fused into one. In an instant, Suyu's palms sank, and the fused eyeball suddenly became 10 times heavier. At the same time, the eyeball emitted a shocking heavenly might, which seemed like it could wipe out all demons and monsters. Suyu's blind eyes suddenly shone with a weak light. The heavenly might that had remained in his eyes until now was somewhat eliminated. Only the last step is to fuse the eyeball into my body. Suyu pressed the silver ink round pearl between his brows. An intense pain came from between his brows, and Suyu's whole body twitched. However, his face was still calm, as if he had not felt anything. A crack was forcefully opened between Suyu's brows, and the silver ink round pearl was hidden within it. This action was akin to forcefully opening Suyu's body and stuffing a foreign object into it. One could imagine how painful it was. However, after his dantian was rebuilt, Suyu did not feel any pain at all. When the fusion was successful, the crack slowly closed, and only a vertical line of blood was left between his brows. It was extremely strange. At the same time, the heavenly might that remained in Suyu's eyes was instantly dispersed by the heavenly might of the demonic eye the moment the heaven-devouring demon eye fused with his brows. It seemed like the heavenly might in the demonic eye was the true heavenly might. The remnants of the heaven's power created by Gu Taishu were just fakes that could not withstand a single blow. He did not know that in his soul space. The drop of blood, which was the remnant blood of the evil god, was trapped in the space. It was startled, and its tone was filled with terror. Tao Tai's eye? How could such a terrifying guy appear? Even someone as strong as the evil god was shocked. After sensing for a moment, it regained some composure. Fortunately, it's really just an eye, and it's an eye with less than 1/10,000th of its power. That kid is really bold. He actually set his sights on the Tao Tai's eye. Even his master might not have such courage. In ancient times, the Cauldron clan, who created the cultivation technique to transplant this eye, was completely devoured by the Tao Tai. They were completely wiped out. Even the Cauldron clan, the mythical clan that dominated the ancient times, could not defeat the Tao Tai, let alone this kid. Tis TSK, I really don't know if this kid can walk on the divine path as his master hoped. I'm afraid there's not much hope for the promise I made to his master. In the outside world, A sharp pain reverberated in Su Yu's eyes. He slowly closed his eyes. When he reopened them, the eyes that had lost their luster regained their vigor and liveliness. The long-lost light shone into his eyes. Although he had the soul eyes, Su Yu had never been troubled by blindness. However, there was still a gap between the world under the soul eyes and the real world. The familiar scenery, the familiar feeling, the familiar world. Everything was back. Su Yu's right eye blinked, and a wine-red light shot up into the sky. At the same time, his left eye closed, and a dazzling purple light bloomed. The power of time, the power of space, the long-lost feeling. Have there been changes? Su Yu murmured softly. He was familiar with the two powers. Whether there were changes, he would know after a short test. As the red liquid filled the three dragons, the power of time and power of space were strengthened. First, the number of times he could use them was no longer once a day, but 12 times a day. The interval between each use would be 2 hours. Second, the power of time could last longer. The acceleration of time had increased from 3 breaths to 30 breaths. The time freeze had increased from 1 breath to 3 breaths. The space teleportation had increased from the initial 10 miles to 100 miles. Third, the mastery of the 3 powers had become more refined. This was just Su Yu's general feeling. The specifics had to be tested in actual combat. Su Yu's eyes were calm. He slowly stood up and looked up into the depths of the sky. He wanted to leave, but he understood that he was still lacking something. With a flip of his palm, a 5-colored jade seal appeared in his palm. The hazy brilliance could not conceal its destructive power. It was filled with thunderbolts, far more powerful than any disastrous thunder. Has the lightning spirit been refined successfully? The prototype fairy artifact power can finally be used to its fullest, Su Yu said. Thanks to the dark Su Yu, the lightning spirit had fused with the 5 elemental strong thunder seal. Otherwise, with Su Yu's power, it would have been impossible for him to suppress the lightning spirit. The prototype fairy artifact had been completed, and his chances of success had increased by a notch. He had wanted to write a few more chapters to end the Jinlong chapter, but the more he wrote, the more difficult it became. He had to change and rewrite, but there was only 1 chapter left. Chapter 722. It's still not enough, Su Yu muttered. Venerable Fu Gui was one of the 10 great bright light guards, and he was an extremely powerful existence among the bright light guards. Ordinary divine masters couldn't be compared to it. The Eternal Stone King armor was more than enough to block an attack from a fairy realm expert, but it would be extremely difficult for an almighty expert like him. Su Yu needed an even stronger defense. With a thought, Su Yu's soul entered the 9 jade spiritual pearl. Arriving at the foot of the profound feather pomegranate tree, a caterpillar was lazily lying on a leaf, swaying leisurely. The chaos multicolored butterfly had devoured the Blood Emperor's blood essence, so it was bigger than before. According to Wu Aoyue, he was very close to spinning the cocoon. This time, when he entered, there were still no signs of him spinning a cocoon. He was as lazy as ever. The silk it spat out was said to be indestructible, and even all creation's old monsters would find it difficult to break it. If it was used as a defensive method, the effects would be obvious. Unfortunately, time waits for no man. It did not start spinning its cocoon. Turning around expressionlessly, Su Yu's soul left. However, just as he was about to leave, he suddenly discovered something and turned his gaze back to the leaf beneath the caterpillar. Vaguely, he sensed the existence of a foreign object, but when he looked at it with his naked eye, the leaf was empty. After pondering for a moment, Su Yu raised his hand and waved. The emerald green leaf peeled off and landed on Su Yu's palm. He stretched out his left index finger, picked up the caterpillar, and brought it close to his eyes to observe. The caterpillar, who was lazily enjoying the sunshine, twisted its round and fat body in dissatisfaction. Then, it accepted its fate and was hung upside down in the air by Su Yu. After moving him away, Su Yu flipped the tender emerald green leaf in his palm. Observing the surface and back of the leaf carefully, there was nothing strange about it. However, the 9 jade spiritual pearl had been refined by Su Yu, so Suyu was able to sense every minute change in the space, from the size of a mountain to the size of a gravel. For example, Shungu, who had been sealed in a corner of the valley by Suyu and had endured the torture of the disastrous thunder, was now barely alive. There was no longer any arrogance in her, and Suyu could sense everything about her. Therefore, the strange feeling that came out of nowhere just now was not an illusion. But why can't I detect it? Suyu muttered to himself irresolutely. As he pondered this for a moment, a scarlet flame appeared on his palm and started burning the green leaves. In the raging fire, the green leaves were instantly reduced to ashes. Strangely, the crimson flames were extinguished. Suyu, who had been paying attention all this while, witnessed the entire process clearly. The crimson flames had been sucked away by something. There is indeed something strange on the green leaf. Moreover, when the green leaf was burnt, the strange object attached itself to Suyu's hand. This is the only way. Suyu bit the tip of his tongue and spouted a mouthful of blood mist. A bloody mist stained his palm, revealing an extremely thin line of blood. As expected, Suyu looked at the lines of blood and revolved his pupils to the extreme. Only then was he able to discern the nature of the lines of blood. It was a colorless and shapeless thread that was thin to the extreme and practically didn't have a material body, to the extent that it was difficult to discern with the naked eye. If the blood mist had not sprayed on it and revealed it, Suyu would not have known that there was such an item in his palm. He attempted to strike a strand of jinchi at the silk, but the thin silk didn't budge at all. Suyu had reconstructed his dantian, and all 6 of his vital energy crystals had been perfected to the extreme, while his vital energy was extremely pure. Just now, when a wisp of true energy shot out, it could easily set off tens of thousands of waves. However, this thin thread did not change at all. It could be seen that this object had a directionless immunity to attacks. Just now, when it was burned by the flames, it automatically absorbed the flames because of its immunity to attacks. What this thin thread was self-evident. It was the silk of the chaos multicolored butterfly. It was rumored that the silk produced by the real chaos multicolored butterfly couldn't even be shaken by the power of all creations. Although the silk in front of him was a mutated one, and it might not be as good as the real chaos multicolored butterfly, it still had the defensive power of the silk. After collecting the silk, Suyu's eyes flickered as he glanced at a corner of the valley. There, a petite girl was suppressed by the disastrous thunder. Her face was pale, and she looked listless. Her vitality was weak. Her former arrogance had turned into dust under the endless torture of the disastrous thunder. Even part of her self-awareness had been exploited. Snap! Suyu snapped his fingers, and the disastrous thunder dissipated. Shungu was freed from it, and she fell to the ground, paralyzed. "Are you still convinced?" Suyu asked indifferently. Shungji's whole body trembled. Suyu's voice sounded like a ferocious demon to her, even though she was the real ghost. She raised her head with difficulty, and her eyes were filled with fear. She didn't have any emotions, not even a little bit of resentment. "No, I wouldn't dare. Master, please spare my life." Shungu was terrified from the bottom of her heart. Suyu looked at her indifferently. "Pray that I can return safely. Otherwise, if I die, the 9 jade spiritual pearl will be lost in the world, and you'll be trapped here forever." Without waiting for Shungu to understand, Suyu's soul returned to his body. He slowly opened his eyes and saw a proud figure standing silently beside him. She was beautiful, but she was exceptionally cold, giving people a feeling of coldness. "Young master, are we going to start? Please take Yuer with you." Wu Aoyue followed Suyu closely, looking at his back. From being misunderstood and captured, to secretly resenting him, to gradually being relieved, to being grateful, and finally to being convinced. Now, she was going to devote herself to him and become his woman. She wanted to accompany him until the end of his life. Suyu turned around and looked at Wu Aoyue. His indifferent eyes were filled with a rare gentleness. However, he shook his head and refused. "If you stay here, regardless of whether I live or die, you will still have a chance to survive. If you follow me, It will be too risky. So you took a step forward, lightning surging around his body. He crossed 10 miles in a single step, not giving Wu Aoyue any time to chase after him. He had already let Xiener down, so he couldn't let Wu Aoyue down as well. Alliance Master Su has shown himself. Alliance Master Su, how are your injuries? Many pairs of concerned eyes were burning with respect and doubt. What should they do? Even a level 9 fairy had almost killed Su Yu and crippled his cultivation, let alone a terrifying almighty divine master. With him watching them from the outside, they could only cower in the dragon abyss. Su Yu didn't reply. Instead, he raised his head and looked at the sky outside the dragon abyss. The sky was blue, like a mirror that had been washed. In Su Yu's eyes, there was only Xiener's satisfied smile before she died. She had been in love with Su Yu and was reluctant to part with him. She had handed him over to Xia Jingyu without any regrets. She had used her death to end their entanglement. Ripples appeared in his heart that was like stagnant water. Su Yu stroked his chest. He felt a sharp pain there, which had never stopped since Xiener's death. I have unfinished business, unfinished battles, and unfinished feelings. I must leave. Su Yu withdrew his gaze and slowly swept his gaze over the people in the dragon abyss. Jiu Yuanzhou, the Phoenix Cabinet's master, Fairy Feng, Phoenix Master Chiu, Gang Dalei, House Master Z, take care of yourselves. I, Su Yu, will leave now. He cupped his fists at them and bowed to them, as if he was bidding them farewell. The eyes of Jiu Yuanzhou, the Phoenix Cabinet's master, Fairy Feng, Zi Yunxiang, and Wu Aoyue, who had caught up to them, were all filled with excitement. How could they not know that Su Yu was courting death? However, at this moment, no one stopped him. Su Yu, regardless of whether you are alive or dead, you will still live in the hearts of Jinlong's people. Take care of yourself. Old Qin bowed to Su Yu as tears rolled down his aged eyes. Hearing this, the people of the true dragon tribe yelled in unison, Alliance Leader Su, take care. Take care. Their sonorous voices echoed throughout the dragon abyss, stirring up the tranquil clouds. It was solemn, solemn, and stirring. It was like a lonely bugle horn that had been left behind on a desolate battlefield. Old Chun wiped his tears, lifted the corner of his robe, and knelt down on one knee. He solemnly kowtowed to Su Yu and said, Farewell, Alliance Leader. Luo Xiong was grief-stricken, and his eyes were bloodshot. He held his weapon with his left hand, knelt down on his right knee, and used his whole body's strength to shout, Farewell, Alliance Leader. Swoosh, swoosh. The people of the Heavenly Law Alliance also knelt down on one knee. Their imposing manner was so great that it seemed like they wanted to break through the heavens. The Heavenly Law Alliance sends off the Alliance Leader. Their silent, solemn, and desolate shouts shook everyone's hearts, causing their blood to boil. Swoosh, swoosh. The people of the true dragon tribe, who weren't members of the Heavenly Law Alliance, all knelt down on one knee at this moment. They were solemn and respectful as they shouted, Jinlong's people send off the Alliance Leader. Their shouts were deafening and shocking. The people of the true dragon tribe were all tearing up as they looked at their king. He was a lonely king who had saved them from the flames of despair. Su Yu's eyes swept the surroundings, and as countless gazes were focused on him, he nodded and flew away. As he flew past the dragon abyss's mouth, Su Yu touched the golden leaves with his fingers, while his divine eyes emitted a monstrous killing intent. Open the seal. Sizzle. It seemed like the golden leaves had received the king's order, and they all separated. What accompanied them was a monstrous killing intent. Swoosh! A person flew into the sky, and in an instant, a white-haired person stood calmly at a height of 10,000 feet above the dragon abyss. His white hair shone with a deathly white luster as it shone under the sunlight. His eyes were slightly bloodshot, and they were filled with killing intent. They seemed like the eyes of a demon. There was a vertical line of blood between his eyebrows, and it seemed like a demonic mark. His white hair, red eyes, and blood mark made him seem like a demonic god. Su Yu's eyes were as cold as ice, and as he stood in his place, he calmly said, Come out and accept your death." As if it was a command, the sea's waves started surging, even though there wasn't any wind, and they struck the reefs, creating snow-white waves. It seemed like there wasn't anyone else in the desolate sea, except for Suyu. "Do you need me to invite you? 3 divine masters?" Suyu spoke once again, his tone calm. 3 divine masters? The pupils of the people in the dragon abyss contracted, and despair welled up in their hearts. Even a single divine master, Alliance Master Su, would surely die, let alone 3 of them. Pop! The sound of crashing waves echoed from the sea beneath his feet. 3 people had teleported over from the sea, and they formed a triangle formation that surrounded Suyu from 3 sides. They were 2 middle-aged men and a middle-aged woman. They had calm temperaments, and their eyes were filled with killing intent. They were all wearing yellow armor, and they all had jade crowns on their heads. The man's jade crown had a blazing sun on it. The woman's jade crown had a bright moon on it. The sun and moon on her head symbolized light, which was the symbol of the bright light guards. Apart from Venerable Fu Gui, there were still 3 divine masters who were bright light guards. They had mobilized such a large force to kill Suyu. Chapter 723. Suyu, we don't have any grudges against you. In fact, I even admire your temperament and talent. The first one to speak was the divine master. She was a middle-aged man with an ordinary appearance and a pair of almond-shaped eyes. Her words seemed like a compliment, but she was actually looking down on Suyu. "But it's a pity that you stood against us, which is why you ended your life. After you reincarnate, remember to be a smart person who can adapt to the circumstances," the divine master said calmly. Suyu stared at her calmly for a while before he shifted his gaze and looked at the other 2 male divine masters. "Do you also have anything to say?" The middle-aged man on the left had a full beard, a tall and sturdy body, and a pair of bell-like eyes. When he heard Suyu's words, he laughed heartily and said, "I didn't think that you were anything special, but I didn't expect that you would still be so unyielding in the face of death. However, what I hate the most is pretending to be calm. Could it be that you think that such a method can make us have a good impression of you and then let you go?" The bearded man coldly smiled. Although he looked rough, his heart was exceptionally shrewd. The middle-aged man on the right was as thin as a stick, and he seemed quite dispirited. He looked at Suyu calmly and shook his head. "Ranguang, don't look down on this lad. According to what we know, he is extremely cunning. He is trying to win our favor and think that we will let him go. It's impossible for him to have such a stupid idea. I guess he just wants to ease the atmosphere so that we can recruit him." It was obviously impossible for them to let Suyu go. However, it was impossible for them to recruit him. The divine master curled her lips and said mockingly, "Maybe Shan Xiong is right. Does this lad want us to recruit him? I have to say, when a person is in a desperate situation, any idea will come into his mind. This lad's talent and temperament are quite good, and if he is nurtured in the future, he might even be able to join the Bright Light Guard. But it's a pity that you killed someone you shouldn't have killed, so no one can save you. You should just give up on this idea and fight like a cornered beast before you die. That way, you could die with dignity." The 3 of them spoke calmly, as if they had seen through Suyu's mind. Suyu listened to them calmly without interrupting them. "Are you done?" Suyu's expression was indifferent, and it was impossible to discern any emotion from him. The bearded man, Ranguang, chuckled and said, "Captain Wu Yin, there's no need to waste time with him. I'm afraid he has already given up all hope and is ready to fight us like a cornered beast. Let's hurry up and attack." The female master called Wu Yin had a similar cultivation level as them, and they were both existences who had just broken through to the divine master realm. However, her aura was slightly stronger, and she was the leader of the trio. "Let's wait and see. Venerable Fu Gui has ordered us to surround Suyu, but not kill him. So, we must inform him to come here first." Wu Yin shook her head. Ranguang and Shan Xiong frowned. Venerable Fu Gui didn't hesitate to use the Emperor Tower to summon them from countless spaces, and it was all for the sake of joining hands to kill this lad. What confused them the most was that Venerable Fu Gui had specifically instructed them not to act arbitrarily, and that they should inform him once he came out of secluded cultivation. After learning about Su Yu's cultivation and various techniques, they did not dare to underestimate him. However, they also felt that they were making a big fuss over a minor issue. The two of them looked at each other and didn't refute. The Radiance Guard had a strict hierarchy. Any one of the 10 great Radiance Guards had the power to suppress others. Hence, they didn't dare to disobey Venerable Fu Gui's orders. Form a formation and surround him. I have already informed Venerable Fu Gui in secret, and he will quickly rush over here, Wu Yin said. The three of them moved back a little and surrounded Su Yu. It seemed like they didn't have any techniques to besiege him, but their energies were still locked onto Su Yu. So, if Su Yu made even the slightest movement, they would be able to take action immediately. The whole place became quiet once again, and only a strange scene remained. 3 divine masters were surrounding a half-fairy. After a moment of silence, Su Yu sucked in a breath and spoke slowly. So, it seems like you have already finished saying what you wanted to say. Ran Guang's beard trembled as he glared at him and said, "Shut up and wait for Venerable Fu Gui's punishment. No matter what you say, you won't be able to deceive us." Yin frowned and sighed. "Since you're going to die, you should at least die with dignity. Why do you have to lose your moral integrity and try to convince us to spare your life? It will only make us see your true colors." Shan Xiong looked at Su Yu calmly, while disdain flickered in his eyes. Su Yu shook his head, while his gaze became ice-cold. "You have misunderstood me. I didn't ask you to spare my life, but to let you finish saying your last words. Since you have already finished, then we can fight." Su Yu's white hair fluttered in the wind. A faint blood-red light shone from his blood seal, while his eyes, which were filled with blood veins, looked at them coldly. Wu Yan's heart thumped in an instant, and she felt like she was facing an evil demon. "Lad, you're just trying to play tricks on us. If Venerable Fu Gui didn't order us to only surround you, you would have already been erased from this world." Ran Guang sneered coldly. However, Su Yu's ice-cold reply was, "You have misunderstood me once again. The one who will decide whether to fight or not is me, not you." When his words echoed, a yellow and blue pearl fell from Su Yu's sleeves, and he threw it at the full-bearded man. "Your mouth is really annoying, so I will start with you. Let's start with a battle to slaughter gods," Su Yu said calmly. Ran Guang was so infuriated that he laughed. A half-fairy was shouting at a group of divine masters that he wanted to slaughter gods. Such words could only be uttered by ignorant children, yet they were now in front of him. "Fine, since it was you who attacked first, then I will just act as a defense. If I accidentally kill you, it won't be considered a violation of orders." Ran Guang sneered coldly. Su Yu's actions were exactly what he wanted. Ran Guang didn't retreat when he saw the ordinary-looking pearl flying at him. However, he still managed to hold back and activate his defense. Unmovable bright king seal. As Ran Guang shouted in a low voice, a Buddha statue appeared behind him. It was a 30-meter-tall golden Buddha statue, which was extremely lifelike and lifelike. The golden Buddha put his palms together and emitted a golden radiance that formed a halo, which engulfed Ran Guang's body. A middle-grade legendary cultivation technique, the unmovable bright king seal's first level. Ran Guang has cultivated this cultivation technique to such a high level. Shan Xiong's pupils contracted slightly. He was slightly afraid of Ran Guang. As the leader of the group, the Divine Master Wu Yin was also surprised. Her eyes turned cold as she said, "Humph, this guy is purposely using it in front of me. Is he dissatisfied with me?" Who wouldn't treat their trump card as a secret? But to deal with an insignificant brat, they had to use their trump card. Their intention was clearly to show off and provoke Wu Yan. However, in Su Yu's eyes, Ran Guang's actions were the most worthy of praise. Even a lion would use its full power to capture a rabbit. Moreover, the records about Su Yu had indeed caused the Divine Master to be wary of him. "You should be able to live longer than your companions," Su Yu commented casually. "It's a pity that you still underestimated your enemy." Ran Guang laughed out loud and said, "With just a small bead." Although he looked down on them, he didn't hold back at all. This punch contained 70% of the almighty Divine Master's strength. The immense true chi drew the surrounding air currents and tore apart a large area of space. Such an attack was comparable to half the power of Gu Taishu's dragon-slaying celestial sword. Not to mention a bead, even a high-grade spirit artifact would be able to withstand it. Unfortunately, this bead was indeed not a high-grade spiritual weapon, because it was of a higher grade than a high-grade spiritual weapon. Bang! Ah! An extremely shrill scream reverberated across the silent sea without any warning. Ranguang's spirit reaches to the rainbow, struck the flying bead, intending to send it flying. However, the moment he came into contact with it, a terrifying recoil came from within the bead, which sent him flying. Moreover, the bead's momentum didn't weaken at all, and it easily crushed Ranguang's arms before crashing into his chest. The golden phantom image behind him flickered several times before it couldn't bear the pressure and shattered with a loud rumble. The legendary cultivation technique stage 1 top-class defense was even weaker than a piece of paper in front of the bead. The bead's momentum didn't weaken at all, and it seemed like it was about to crush Ranguang. Ranguang was horrified, but he still reacted quickly. He shouted, "Extreme Shadow Wind Travel Step." His body became fuzzy, and a series of afterimages appeared in the air as he retreated quickly. The bead crushed the afterimages one after another, but it still couldn't catch up with the real body. After losing its momentum, the bead fell. Suyu raised his hand, and the bead flew back into his palm, as if it was summoned by him. After all, the bead couldn't fall casually, as the dragon abyss below it would be instantly crushed into ashes by its gravity. Ranguang, who had narrowly escaped, was drenched in cold sweat. His face was pale, and his tiger-like eyes were filled with lingering fear. If he had hesitated for even a moment, he would have been crushed to death by that terrifying bead. "Lad, what is that thing?" Ranguang wasn't the only one who was startled, as Wu Yin and Shan Xiong were also startled. They knew that Suyu had some techniques that could resist a divine master, but they had never imagined that it would be so terrifying. That bead, which could crush everything, made them shudder. Their disdain for Suyu was gone. At this moment, they finally understood why Venerable Fu Gui had instructed them to surround him, but not kill him. Their indifferent expressions suddenly turned serious. Shan Xiong quickly regrouped with Ranguang. Wu Yin, who had a clear understanding of the situation, said, "Ranguang's arms have been destroyed, and he needed someone to protect him so that he could recover." As the two of them willed it, they instantly crossed 100 meters and arrived in front of Ranguang, protecting him. "Ranguang, quickly swallow the Lonling heavenly fragrance pill and recover your arms," Wu Yin shouted in a deep voice. Ranguang's face became hideous due to the pain he was in, and he clenched his teeth, spouted a mouthful of vital energy, and engulfed his index finger. A dim yellow light flickered on the ring on his index finger, and a white jade bottle floated out of it. There was a white pill in the jade bottle, which emitted an astonishing fragrance. It smelled like a virgin, yet also like 100 flowers. Ranguang used his vital energy to open the jade bottle, took the pill, and stuffed it into his mouth. A moonlight flickered on his destroyed arms. When the moonlight dissipated, his arms, which had disappeared, unexpectedly reappeared once again. He had managed to regenerate his flesh and blood in just a few breaths' time. What kind of divine pill was this? After his pain subsided, Ranguang let out a long breath. When he raised his head once again, a ferocious glint appeared in his eyes, and he glared at Suyu like a ferocious tiger. "You are the first person to injure me to such an extent." Chapter 724. His words caused Wu Yan's heart to thump once again. She suddenly realized that Suyu had been quietly observing Ranguang's injuries while he was healing them. Could it be that he wasn't afraid of the three of them joining hands and didn't dare to attack them? Could it be that he was waiting for Ranguang to recover before killing him? Even she didn't believe such a ridiculous idea. Ranguang's injuries were due to the pearl's power, but it was also due to his carelessness. If he had been wary of the pearl and avoided colliding with it, how could it have struck Ranguang? Ranguang laughed angrily, but his pupils contracted slightly. "Ignorant lad, do you think I'm afraid of you?" However, before he could finish his words, Suyu calmly said, "Whether you're afraid or not won't change anything." As his words echoed out, the weather suddenly changed. The whole sky suddenly darkened. Many black clouds had already gathered in the sky. A mighty heavenly might slowly reverberated within the dark clouds. The world's might? As divine masters, they had gone through many tribulations, so they understood the existence of the world's might. After all, Gu Taishu's pure divine decree had replaced the heavenly might, so it was impossible that they didn't know about it. While they were still in shock, a crack appeared in the black clouds, and a giant illusory eye was revealed. The eye seemed like the sun and moon, and it was overlooking the world. The eye was apathetic, and it seemed like heaven was overlooking the world. Heaven's eye? The three of them were shocked, as if they had been electrocuted. That eye seemed like the heaven's eye. It seemed like heaven had descended and was surveying the world with its eyes. The eye was filled with a terrifying heavenly might, which made even the divine masters shiver in fear. A crazy warning came from their hearts at the same time. If they acted rashly, that I could easily destroy them. It wasn't just this place, as the whole Jinlong continent saw the heaven's eye. In the Dragon Abyss continent, it was the same. Venerable Fu Ge, who was rushing over, had a gloomy expression. Pure divine decree? Wasn't it sealed by Gu Taishu? Why did it appear again? Oh no, Wu Yin and the others are in danger. His expression changed drastically. In the central continent, there was a gigantic mountain peak that pierced through the clouds. At the peak of the cliff, a stalwart man stood quietly. His eyes were as cold as lightning. At this moment, he raised his head and looked at the heavenly eye above the 9 heavens. There was a hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth. "We meet again, pure divine decree." As soon as he finished speaking, he took a step forward, and he only left behind a gust of cold wind as he vanished into the clouds. Above the Dragon Abyss. "Destroy." As Suyu gave the order, his ancient voice reverberated throughout the world. It was as if the heavens were speaking, and it was extremely majestic. As for the heavenly eye, it blinked slightly before opening once again. However, this seemingly casual blink of an eye caused the entire world to fall silent. Ranguang, who was protected by Wu Yin and Shan Xiong, didn't move at all. Sensing that something was amiss, the two of them turned around to take a look. Their bodies stiffened, and at the same time, their eyes were filled with fear. Ranguang's eyes were dull and lifeless. His body was like a piece of charcoal that had been burnt to a crisp. Pa! With a light sound, his body shattered into pieces that fell into the Dragon Abyss. Just like that, an unparalleled God Lord was killed by a single glance. From the moment Suyu attacked to the moment he was killed, only 10 breaths had passed. Moreover, Suyu didn't even use the heavenly eye right from the start. Wu Yin and Shan Xiong didn't dare to move. They could feel the eyes above the 9 heavens staring at them. They felt like they were surrounded by death. If they made even the slightest movement, Ranguang would end up like them. Gulp! Shan Xiong swallowed hard, while beads of sweat appeared on Wu Yan's forehead. The 2 divine masters didn't even have the power to resist. They recalled how they had looked down on Suyu in the beginning, but now they didn't even have the will to resist. How shocking was this contrast? Suyu wasn't trying to please them by asking them to speak. Suyu didn't need them at all. Wu Yan's heart trembled, and she bit her red lips tightly. Her eyes were filled with struggle. She wanted to beg for mercy. Yes, she wanted to beg for mercy. When Suyu was in a desperate situation, she had righteously scolded him, telling him that even if he died, he should die with dignity. Now that things had come to a head, she wanted to beg for mercy. Thud! Footsteps could be heard coming from behind them. Wu Yan's heart was thumping madly. Her heart was in her throat, but she didn't dare to move. Suyu's apathetic voice could be heard from behind them. "Do you want to live or die?" It was a simple and straightforward question. If it had been before, they would have thought that it was just a child's quarrel. A half-fairy asking a divine master whether they wanted to live or die was just a fantasy. But now it was right in front of them. Yes, just like we said, we don't have any enmity between us. Young hero, please spare us. Shan Xiong's face was pale. When Su Yu's gaze left him, Shan Xiong felt the pressure on him lessen. Su Yu had let him go. Shan Xiong's whole body was weak, and his heart was aching slightly. It was all because it was beating too hard. What about you? Su Yu's gaze fell on Wu Yan. Wu Yan bit her red lips tightly. She wanted to reject him, but when the words came to her mouth, they became consent. Yes, Wu Yan said. Su Yu was expressionless, as if subduing two almighty divine masters wasn't something to be happy about. Okay, you just have to obey my orders, and if you dare to resist, then you will die immediately, Su Yu instructed them calmly. The two of them felt like they had just walked past the gates of hell, and their whole bodies were drenched in sweat as they nodded hurriedly. They were almighty divine masters, but in front of death, they weren't any different from ordinary people. You just have to do this later, Su Yu said. When they heard him, their pupils contracted and their expressions became unsightly. They seemed to be struggling. However, when they raised their heads and looked at the heavenly eye, which was hidden in the clouds, they nodded bitterly. A single thought from Su Yu could kill them all in an instant. Swoosh! After half a cup of tea's time had passed, a yellow-skinned person flew over from the horizon. His eyes were sunken, and there were two flickering ghost flames on them. It was Venerable Fu Gui. He was one of the 10 great bright light guards. There were countless bright light guards in the central prefecture, but there were only 10 of them. All of them were peerless experts chosen from the bright light guards, and their talents, experiences, and talents were all top-notch. Moreover, since Venerable Fu Gui had been chosen to carry out the mission of looking for Shunny Chen, it was obvious that he was extraordinary. Sir, Wu Yin and Shan Xiong, whose mouths were filled with blood, flew around Su Yu and returned to Venerable Fu Gui's side. When Venerable Fu Gui saw them, his expression became gloomy. I told you to surround him, but not kill him. Who allowed you to attack him without permission? An embarrassed look appeared on Wu Yan's face, and she said bitterly, We really followed your orders, but this lad provoked Ran Guang first, and he was infuriated into attacking him. That's why we started fighting. Ran Guang? Venerable Fu Gui was slightly confused. Since he was the one who had summoned those 3 people, he should be aware of their character. Although Ran Guang seemed impulsive, he was actually an extremely cautious person, so why would he attack them rashly? However, when he thought about it, he realized that they didn't take him seriously when he had ordered them to surround him but didn't kill him. In the end, Ran Guang had still underestimated his enemies. After he surveyed the surroundings, he looked at the heavenly eye, which was in the sky, and his expression became gloomy. Does this mean that Ran Guang has already died? Wu Yin blamed herself. Sir, I didn't manage to protect him. Venerable Fu Gui averted his gaze from her and shook his head. It's not your fault, as this lad's pure divine decree can carry out punishment on behalf of the heavens. Even if I was there, I wouldn't have been able to save him. His words caused Wu Yin and Shan Xiong's expressions to change slightly, and they exchanged a glance. Since even Venerable Fu Gui couldn't save him, they could only obey Su Yu's orders. He raised his eyes and looked at Su Yu coldly. Fine, you're surprising me more and more. Even though your Dantian was destroyed, you didn't lose your cultivation. Instead, you became even more powerful than before. I can't even discern whether you're now a half-fairy or a fairy. He had assumed that Su Yu's cultivation had been crippled, so even if he showed himself, he wouldn't be able to do anything. Unexpectedly, his Dantian's destruction had given him a stroke of luck. After he showed himself, he even killed the Divine Master. Su Yu's gaze was still calm. Before you get another chance, tell me where Xia Jingyu took Xiener's corpse. Killing intent appeared in Su Yu's eyes when he mentioned Xia Jingyu. Qin Xiener hadn't been killed by Xia Jingyu, but her betrayal had caused many uncertainties. Other people only knew that Xia Jingyu was controlled by Hong Wan, but Su Yu, who possessed the soul eyes, was aware that Hong Wan didn't control Xia Jingyu's soul. It was all Xia Jingyu's doing. I already extracted her bloodline's power, and what's left of her is just a skeleton. If you can revive her skeleton, I will be merciful and return it to you. Venerable Fu Gui revealed a sinister smile. Su Yu's gaze was calm and tranquil. I have already answered you. Now, I will send you on your way, Suyu said calmly. His voice reverberated like a heavenly might. The black clouds in the sky were pushed aside, and a heavenly eye appeared. It looked at Venerable Fu Gui and opened its eyes. A miserable shriek echoed out, as if something had been killed. However, Venerable Fu Gui was still standing in his former place, and a large amount of black powder was fluttering down from his sleeves. This divine decree is really powerful, and it might be useful against other divine masters. But I can restrain it. Venerable Fu Gui sneered coldly as he waved his sleeves, and 10 ferocious ghost heads flew out of them. The ghost heads all had hideous faces and sharp fangs, which emitted an ominous glint. Every single one of them was at the level 9 fairy realm. When Venerable Fu Gui was about to die, he had used a ghost head to take the Heavenly Eyes attack in his place. Eat him! Venerable Fu Gui commanded the ghost head from afar, while he moved back slightly to keep a distance from Suyu. He wanted to guard against Suyu's strange attack. Suyu's gaze was calm, as if the Heavenly Eyes' failure wasn't strange at all. Is that so? As Suyu chuckled, a scene occurred that caused Venerable Fu Gui's expression to change drastically. Wu Yin and Shan Xiong, who were behind Venerable Fu Gui, suddenly used their strongest attacks and attacked Venerable Fu Gui's back. Thorns drink blood. Wu Yin thrust her palm at Venerable Fu Gui. Her palm strike was mysterious and contained a mysterious power that only a divine master could control. At the same time, Shan Xiong thrust his palm at Venerable Fu Gui's back. Sky burning sun extinguishing palm. Shan Xiong's palm strike contained a powerful vital energy, and it struck Venerable Fu Gui's back with an earth-shattering might. As for Wu Yan's palm strike, it sent a mysterious power into Venerable Fu Gui's body. Venerable Fu Gui had suddenly suffered a sneak attack from one of his own people, and it had happened without any warning. Even though Venerable Fu Gui was very cautious, he still didn't guard against such an attack. Chapter 725. Puff! Venerable Fu Gui's body fell on the ground, and a mouthful of blood spurted out of his mouth. Venerable Fu Gui tumbled several times, and he ended up in a sorry state. Shan Xiong's withered yellow Taoist robe was smashed to pieces by his palm strike. His crown fell to the ground, and his hair was disheveled. His pair of eyes, which were filled with flickering ghostly flames, appeared even more sinister than before. You are really daring. Venerable Fu Gui's voice was gloomy and filled with anger. That was not the anger of being injured, but the anger of betrayal. Venerable Fu Gui shook his clothes and stood up straight. It was obvious that his body hadn't suffered any harm from Shan Xiong's full-power palm strike. Shan Xiong, your palm technique was taught to you by me, yet you still dare to attack me with such little tricks? Venerable Fu Gui said coldly as he wiped off the blood at the corners of his mouth. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Amidst the blood, a thistle vaguely appeared. Brambles drink blood. Venerable Fu Gui's expression became gloomy, and killing intent flickered in his eyes. Wu Yin, it has only been a month since you advanced to the Divine Master Realm, yet you have already grasped the Divine Seal? Not bad, cough, cough. As he spoke, he coughed out another stream of blood that was stained with thorns. A God mark was a mark formed when one broke into the God Lord realm. The marks contained different abilities, and their power varied from person to person. The reason why a divine master was stronger than a fairy was not only because of his majestic vital energy, but also because of his divine seal. Most divine masters would only be able to form the divine seal after a long time after their breakthrough. Shan Xiong had broken through for a year and still hadn't been able to comprehend it, but Wu Yin had managed to form the divine seal in a month. Her battle prowess was much higher than Shan Xiong's because she had mastered the divine seal. As a matter of fact, all of Venerable Fu Gui's injuries had been caused by Wu Yin, and even though Shan Xiong's palm attack seemed powerful, it still hadn't caused much harm to Venerable Fu Gui. Wu Yan's pupils contracted, and she was frightened. She wanted to explain herself, but when she saw Su Yu and the heavenly eye hanging above her head, she clenched her teeth and said, "I'm sorry, Lord. We were forced to do this. Please don't blame us." Venerable Fu Gue laughed sinisterly. "Who said that I would blame you? You gave me a reason to refine ghost heads. What's there to blame?" Hearing this, the two's faces turned pale. The ghost head was the ghost head released by Venerable Fu Gue. Those ghost heads did not appear out of thin air. Instead, they were the heads of powerful enemies that had been beheaded and refined. In the Central Prefecture, this was a forbidden technique, and he did not dare to openly kill almighty divine masters. However, in the 9 states, especially when they had betrayed him of their own accord, thinking of this, the two of them were terrified. When they sensed Venerable Fu Gue's suppressed anger, the two of them didn't even give this matter a second thought, and they split up and fled. Venerable Fu Gue just sneered and waved his sleeves, while 2 more ghost heads flew out. These 2 ghost heads were twice as big as the other ghost heads, and their auras surpassed the fairy realm, reaching the level of a divine master. Flying ghost head? The 2 screamed in horror as if they had seen a ghost. All the bones of divine masters were known as flying ghost heads. Not only were they stronger, but they were also more ferocious. With their cultivation, it was impossible for them to block the flying ghost head. Shan Xiong didn't get far before the flying ghost head caught up to him and bit his shoulder. As the ghost screamed excitedly, the flying ghost head tore off half of Shan Xiong's chest. Shan Xiong let out several miserable screams as he lost all power to escape and was torn to shreds by the flying ghost head. His death was extremely cruel. Such a scene made Wu Yan's scalp turn numb, and she clenched her teeth, while her speed increased by 3 times. Venerable Fu Gue was slightly surprised. The second level of a legendary body cultivation technique? Hee, you still have a trick up your sleeve, but it's a pity that I want your head. Do you think that you can block me? The flying ghost head whistled as it quickly caught up to Wu Yan and bit her. Wu Yan was startled, and she screamed, "Su Yu, quickly save me. No one can save you, as he can't even protect himself." Venerable Fu Gue snorted coldly. However, when his voice just echoed, a lightning bolt flickered behind Wu Yan. The flying ghost head that was chasing Wu Yan let out a miserable scream, but its voice stopped abruptly, while its body disappeared without a trace. Only black smoke was left behind. Sizzle. At the same time, a ferocious little beast, whose whole body was covered in lightning, was standing not far from it. As it breathed, it spouted lightning stars from its nostrils. When that lightning star fell into the sea, it turned into a sea of flames, which evaporated all of the seawater in 1,000 miles. If even a lightning star could do such a thing, then what about the lightning beast itself? Venerable Fu Gue's smile stiffened, and his pupils contracted, while fear appeared on his face. Lightning spirit. Lightning spirits were spiritual beings born from lightning, and they possessed a terrifying might. It was rumored that the tribulation lightning that cultivators faced when they made a breakthrough was controlled by lightning spirits. Moreover, lightning spirits were the bane of all evil beings in the world. Venerable Fu Gue raised his hand and beckoned the other flying ghost head to come back to him. However, when the flying ghost head moved, the lightning beast looked at it ferociously, and as a sizzling sound echoed out, it crossed a large space. The flying ghost head didn't even get a chance to let out a miserable scream before it was caught in the lightning beast's mouth. As the lightning beast bit it, the flying ghost head was crushed into pieces. Lightning spirits detested evil beings, and even without Su Yu's command, they would still attack it. A pained look appeared on Venerable Fu Gue's face. After all, it wasn't easy to make a flying ghost head, and he had only managed to make 2 of them in his whole life. "Lad, I want you to die miserably." Venerable Fu Gue flew into a rage as he looked at Su Yu, who was holding the 5-colored jade seal. At this moment, there wasn't even a single ghost head left in Su Yu's surroundings. They had all been turned into ashes by the lightning beast. Su Yu wore an apathetic look as he said, You should worry about yourself first. After he spoke, he imbued his vital energy into the jade seal, which shone brightly. The ferocious lightning beast struggled for a while, then glared at Suyu and bared its teeth. It was unexpectedly trying to resist him. However, it was fortunate that the 5-elemental strong thunder seal was just an embryonic fairy artifact, and it wasn't easy to resist it. As the lightning beast roared, it wasn't willing to submit, and it looked at Venerable Fu Gui before it pounced at him. Venerable Fu Gui's eyelids twitched. How could he dare to face such a terrifying creature head-on? Venerable Fu Gui's shoulder slipped, and he quickly dodged it. However, it was still too late, and his sleeve was bitten by the lightning beast. As the lightning flame spread, it instantly set his yellow robe ablaze. The evil ghosts in his sleeve were instantly killed by the lightning flame, and miserable shrieks echoed everywhere. You are a beast. Venerable Fu Gui was startled, and he angrily roared as he tore his sleeve and escaped. After he inspected his sleeve, he discovered that only ashes were left, while the ghost heads and other objects inside had all been turned into ashes. Half of his life's work had been destroyed. Evil creature, I will kill you. Venerable Fu Gui angrily shouted, while the green ghost flames in his eyes flickered and flew out of his eye sockets, then attacked the lightning beast. The ferocious lightning beast was startled, and a trace of fear appeared in its eyes. However, even though it was ferocious, it still pounced at it. The two ghost flames contained dense, eerie ghost energy, and they were unexpectedly able to resist the lightning beast for a short while. Venerable Fu Gui took advantage of such an opportunity to look at Suyu angrily. He clenched his teeth, and his eyes, which had lost their ghost flames, became pitch black, which made him seem quite terrifying. I will kill you. Swoosh! Venerable Fu Gui's movement technique was extremely quick, and since Suyu didn't have any assistance, he didn't even have the power to retaliate. Sure enough, even when Venerable Fu Gui was only 3 meters away from Suyu, he still didn't detect him. Evil creature, die! Venerable Fu Gui thrust his palm toward Suyu's chest, as if he wanted to dig out his heart. However, Suyu suddenly spoke in an apathetic tone. Is that so? I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. As he spoke, a dazzling purple light shot out of his left eye. A purple dragon coiled around Venerable Fu Gui, which couldn't be seen by the naked eye. Time freeze. As the purple dragon coiled around him, Venerable Fu Gui was still able to think, but his body was frozen, and he couldn't budge an inch. Venerable Fu Gui was greatly startled, as he had an innate talent for time. Since ancient times, who was able to control time? Time was the universe's indestructible law, and it was the only thing that had kept the universe going. It was indestructible, and who could touch it? Even someone with an innate talent for time wouldn't be able to freeze time like this. This lad unexpectedly possessed such a terrifying magical ability. As Venerable Fu Gui looked at him in fright, Suyu strode forward, took a fine thread from his sleeves, which couldn't be seen by the naked eye, and quickly coiled it around Venerable Fu Gui's neck. Although Venerable Fu Gui's time had been frozen, he was still gliding forward at a high speed. Gurgle! The sound of blood splattering reverberated in Venerable Fu Gui's mind, and this was the last sound his body heard. This was because his head had been cut off by the fine thread. He was one of the 10 great bright light guards, yet his head had been cut off in such a manner. At this moment, 3 breaths had passed. The time freeze's power disappeared. The headless corpse slid into the distance and fell into the sea. The head followed closely behind it. However, at this moment, a transparent phantom image flew out of the head. It was difficult for the naked eye to see it, and only a soul or a divine master's cultivation could see it. That transparent phantom image was exactly the same as Venerable Fu Gui. It was a magical ability that could only be achieved by an almighty divine master. Even though his body had been destroyed, his soul was still there. Suyu, Venerable Fu Gui roared madly, while his heart was filled with intense hatred. I will make you regret this. After he spoke, he flew toward the dragon abyss's entrance. The entrance was sealed by the heavenly orchid silver bamboo's golden leaves, and it was impossible for his body to enter it. However, his soul could disregard all matter and enter it. Venerable Fu Gui's soul wasn't as powerful as it had been in its peak state, but it was still a great disaster for the people in the Dragon Abyss, whose cultivations were quite low. Suyu was familiar with all of them, and they were all people he wanted to protect. Ha ha ha, Suyu, just look. I will kill all of them, including your father-in-law. Since you destroyed my body, I will make you suffer so much pain that you will wish you were dead. Venerable Fu Gui laughed maliciously. Suyu, who was just a soul, couldn't do anything to him, so he could only look on helplessly as he slaughtered all of his family members. However, Suyu's gaze was still calm, and he spoke calmly. Is that so? Since you are just a soul, why didn't you quickly hide? Instead, you dare to harm others? Chapter 726. Soul Space. As Suyu let out a light shout, the swirling vortexes in his silver-gray eyes released a ferocious suction force. Venerable Fu Gui, who was about to pass through the golden leaf seal, was blown back like a leaf in the wind. What's this? Venerable Fu Gui was startled, as he was engulfed by the suction power. Even though he had a powerful soul, he was still like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered, and his body was being sucked away. The resentment in his eyes turned into panic. I will send you to hell, Suyu shouted coldly, his silver-gray eyes shining even brighter. As a swooshing sound echoed, Venerable Fu Gui's soul body was compressed unceasingly, and in the end, it turned into the size of a star, which was absorbed into the whirlpool. Suyu, don't rejoice too early, as you and the Jinlong continent's people will all be exterminated, and no one will be able to escape. Before he was engulfed, the despairing Venerable Fu Gui let out a shout of despair, which sounded like a curse. Suyu had an indifferent look on his face. You don't have to worry about that. Go in peace. Whoosh! His soul body sank into it and fell into a space forged by his soul. It was boundless, empty, and deathly silent. Forging space with your soul? How could this be? Even an all-creation old monster can't achieve such a feat, let alone a trifling half-immortal. Venerable Fu Gui was stunned. It was clearly a dead world, but suddenly there were a few hoarse and evil voices. He, a newcomer, this old man, had the same doubts as you back then. A drop of blood slowly floated over from the darkness. Who is it? Venerable Fu Gui's hair stood on end, and that evil aura made him panic. The drop of blood calmly floated in front of Venerable Fu Gui, and it smacked its lips. I'm obviously your senior, as we were all sealed in the soul dimension by that lad. Venerable Fu Gui's pupils contracted, and as he looked at the drop of blood, his gaze changed greatly. After a long while, his face gradually calmed down. Do you also have a great feud with this child? The droplet of blood chuckled and said, A life and death feud? After all, that little fellow's body was nearly occupied by this old man. Venerable Fu Gui heaved a sigh of relief inwardly, and his eyes flickered with a bright light. Your Excellency, you have been trapped for such a long time, and you still can't leave. Why don't we work together to find a way out? The drop of blood seemed to be pointing at something. Way out? So what if he could find it? Little fellow, what are you planning to do? Hatred surged in Venerable Fu Gui's eyes as he said, I'm obviously looking for a new body to cultivate once again before I grind this lad's bones and scatter his ashes. The droplet of blood did not respond. When Venerable Fu Gui saw that the drop of blood seemed to be moved, he continued, Your Excellency, if you are willing to join hands with me, you will surely get many benefits. I'm a Central Prefecture's Bright Light Guard, and I have the support of the Central Prefecture's king, so I can still find you a mere body. What do you think? Do you want to join hands with me? The droplet of blood in front of him gave him an extremely uneasy feeling. Even if he couldn't ally with it, he had to try his best to ease their relationship. What do you think? The drop of blood seemed to be hesitating. Expectation appeared in Venerable Fu Gui's eyes, and he was quite confident in himself, since the drop of blood was facing such a predicament. Even if it was a ferocious creature, it would still understand the principle of facing a common enemy together. However, in the next moment, the drop of blood chuckled and said, "Nothing much." Venerable Fu Gui's expression became gloomy. "Don't you want to take revenge? I don't believe that you don't have any hatred towards this lad for sealing you here. Moreover, the body that I promised to give you is at least a fairy body or even a divine master body." Venerable Fu Gui moved back slowly and became vigilant. Hatred? This lad's teacher is quite outstanding, and even if I wanted to hate him, I would still have to be courageous. The drop of blood revealed a faint smile. Moreover, you still can't satisfy my body, and only that lad's teacher can help me. Venerable Fu Gui's heart shuddered. A teacher? Does that lad have a teacher who hides his abilities? Venerable Fu Gui had failed to ally with the drop of blood, so he decided to settle for the next best thing. Since this is the case, I won't insist on it, and I will look for a way to break out of this place in the following days. If you don't want to help me, then please don't obstruct me, and you can leave by yourself at that time. He planned to persuade it to mind its own business and get along harmoniously with it. However, the drop of blood let out a strange laugh. Its laughter made his hair stand on end. Leave? Why should I leave? This place is protected by a powerful old man, and I might even get a body in the future. Moreover, a soul might fall here any time. So why should I leave? A tonic? Venerable Fu Gui's hair stood on end, and he wondered, does it want to treat me as a tonic? Your Excellency, what do you mean? Do you think that I'm easy to bully? Venerable Fu Gui put on a fierce front, but he was actually afraid. The drop of blood chuckled. What do I mean? My soul has already been greatly damaged, and I lack a tonic. It's unfortunate that you fell here, so I won't eat you to replenish my body. How dare you? Venerable Fu Gui shouted sharply, while he turned around and fled. The drop of blood in front of him was too evil, and he didn't dare to fight it. The drop of blood chuckled. Freeze! Venerable Fu Gui was overwhelmed with shock. As soon as the drop of blood spoke, he was really frozen, and he couldn't move at all. At the same time, his soul body started disintegrating at a high speed, and it turned into sparkling crystals that entered the drop of blood. Don't! Venerable Fu Gui let out a terrified roar. However, his voice quickly stopped. His soul body disintegrated, and it was completely erased from the world. An early-stage divine master is still average. The drop of blood said calmly, while its blood-red color became slightly more intense, and it regained some of its luster. I don't know whether that lad can survive it, as an early-stage divine master is probably his limit, and if a more powerful one comes, he will most likely die here. Moreover, if he dies, I don't even know whether I can get the body promised by that old man, and I might even be trapped in this soul space for the rest of my life. The drop of blood was quite worried, and it got lost in its thoughts. In the outside world, the dragon abyss was in an uproar. They had assumed that Su Yu's journey would be like a moth flying into a flame, and that he would surely die. But who would have expected that Su Yu, who had just reconstructed his Dantian, would become so powerful? He would kill any god who obstructed his way, and he would kill any Buddha who obstructed his way. He had even killed a divine master and one of the 10 great bright light guards. The shock in everyone's heart was at its peak. Even Elder Gio was shocked. Is he really a human? A half-fairy was invincible, yet he was able to kill a divine master. How unimaginable was this? If Elder Gio hadn't witnessed it with his own eyes, he would have had to ponder over it for a long time. Wu Yin, who was standing behind Su Yu, had come to take Su Yu's life, but now she didn't dare to move. The fear in her heart had reached an unprecedented level. Even someone as powerful as Venerable Fu Gui was unexpectedly killed by this lad. Not only his body, but even his soul also couldn't escape. It could be said that both his body and soul were exterminated. As Wu Yin looked at Su Yu's back, she felt like he was a demon god who could kill a divine master with a single thought. She would never forget such a scene for the rest of her life. Suyu was the only one who didn't rejoice at all, even though he had just killed a divine master. Suyu flicked the silk lightly with his finger, and the blood on it flew away, then turned into a blood mist under the setting sun. Siener. Suyu only had Siener in his heart. He had killed venerable Fu Gue, but he hadn't seen Siener yet, so it couldn't be considered a victory. As he closed his eyes, the heavenly eye in the sky surveyed the world. All of the Jinlong continent's living beings felt a wave of heavenly might sweeping through their bodies. Regardless of whether they were ants or moths, or even strong martial artists of the fairy realm, none of them could hide from the heavenly wrath. There wasn't any sea. There wasn't any sunken northern continent. There wasn't any in the central continent, western continent, southern continent, or eastern continent. Xia Jingyu had disappeared along with Qin Siener. Xia Jingyu. Suyu suddenly opened his eyes and shouted. His voice, which contained the power of the legendary sound wave cultivation technique, shook the entire area. Everything, from the abyss of the sea to the clouds, was covered by the sound wave. Even the farthest southern continent could hear the roar, which came from the bottom of his heart. All of a sudden, everyone was terrified and uneasy. Whose roar could shake the world? All of a sudden, Suyu's gaze shot toward the clouds and the depths of the sea. A cold light and a tinge of excitement appeared in his eyes at the same time. If you dare to act recklessly here, you will die. Suyu didn't even turn his head. With a flutter of his sleeves, he disappeared. These words were naturally meant for Wu Yin, who was behind him. Not only did Wu Yin not feel disgusted by such a command and threat, but she also heaved a sigh of relief. Her tense nerves relaxed slightly. Finally, Suyu didn't kill her. With Suyu's power, he could kill her in a breath's time. Yes, my lord. Wu Yin nodded hurriedly, not daring to disobey him. At this moment, Suyu had already flown to the depths of the sea. When he stopped, it was unknown whether it was a coincidence or not, but the place where he stopped was in the sky above Xinyue Island. The place where Suyu had set off from was also where he had met Xia Jingyu and Qin Siener. Suyu's gaze was ice-cold as he quickly followed the aura that he had discovered. When he landed on the ground, he was slightly startled. The aura had come from the backyard of the Duke of Xinyu's palace, which was in a garden filled with blooming pear blossoms. It was now late autumn, and many flowers had withered. However, the pear blossoms in the courtyard were still blooming like snow. The fallen petals were everywhere, and the pavilion was like a painting. The most beautiful thing was the person standing among the fallen petals. Her beautiful figure was like a fairy, and she had an extraordinary temperament. She didn't seem like someone from the mortal world. It was a familiar figure, a familiar place, and a familiar pear blossoms. However, everything had changed. You've come. The figure turned around, and her beautiful face was still the same as it had been in the past. Xia Jingyu's skirt fluttered in the wind as she sat down gracefully. The wine and dishes were still steaming, as they had just come out of the oven. She was proficient in the Path Divine Decree, so she already knew that Suyu would come here. In fact, she already knew the fates of Venerable Fu Gue and the 3 divine masters who had been summoned here. Suyu's gaze flickered for a moment before it was replaced by a sense of unfamiliarity. He then said calmly, "Everything has changed." Xia Jingyu curled up her lips and revealed a smile that could shock the world. As the sun set, her smile was as beautiful as the clouds on the horizon. That's right. Everything has changed, and it's impossible for us to go back to the past. Xia Jingyu revealed a gentle smile, but her smile contained a sense of loneliness. Suyu didn't reply, but continued walking forward. He looked at Xia Jingyu calmly, as if he was looking at a stranger. "Give me Qin Siener's body, while I'm still unable to attack you." Xia Jingyu chuckled lazily and drank a cup of wine. Her snow-white cheeks became flushed as she asked, "You can't attack me? Is this your reward for feeling sorry for me? Or are you pitying me?" Suyu stood in front of the stone table and said calmly, "It's neither." Xia Jingyu raised her eyes and looked at Suyu. She then laughed mockingly and asked, "Then what is it?"